Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Stephen, or should I say Stephen, was always lonely, but he never blamed his loneliness on his pride and rigidity, which often turned into cruelty. No, it's certainly not my character, did he think, when his son once again said how cruel this father was. He had heard such reproaches from people around him many times, starting with his son and ending even with the cleaning lady he had fired. He'd heard it before. Son, you should have lived your life. That's when we talk. Mason, his son, and his joy. All that was left of his first wife, Nancy. They were a perfect couple, and from their childhood yard. Not to mention the institute, the job in the prestigious foreign ministry, where not without the help of his father. Stephen got a job for both of them. Even then they were told that they could not find a better couple, and from the face of an uncle one could paint pictures or even icons. But a tragic accident cut short all the plans and hopes of the young. What's the matter with the intervention of the powers that be? The worst day of Stephen's life he always remembered. The road-wrecked wife's car and her body covered with a sheet. A trivial case, as the investigators said at the time, of a wet road. And there. But Stephen, who had already then reached considerable heights, the diplomat realized that it was not just that. It's just the officially approved version for the press or internal reports. But he's the one they want to remove from the political arena. And his wife's death is a warning. Stephen, we certainly grieve with you and understand how much you loved our daughter, Nancy's father said. But I beg you by God, we'll leave and from the ministry of the book and our grandson. Only then did the man realize how serious it was, since his father-in-law had already told him directly that it was time to leave and his grandson's life was at risk. So you got a call too. James, you don't have to say anything, just nod your head, and that's it. But my father-in-law wouldn't say anything. He didn't even have the energy to nod. After his daughter's death, he just turned and walked away, leading his weeping wife by the hand. Since then, Stephen filed a report for dismissal for family reasons, and taking his son, simply left such a happy and prosperous Germany. There's nothing for me to do here. Son, it's time to go home, he said to little Mason, sitting in the train that started for Moscow. And what's there? Oh, come on. Nancy's father promised to get him a job in the ministry, so he won't be out of work for sure. And with his knowledge of language, diplomacy, and persuasive skills, Stephen was not afraid of being left without money, but apparently the diplomatic Olympus was not his destiny. To be more precise, his father-in-law immediately hinted to him about it. Having once invited a high ministerial department to his office, Stephen went up in the elevator and understood that the conversation would not be simple and not on simple topics. Since his father-in-law had summoned him to his office, Stephen, you understand, the father-in-law began, looking at his son-in-law carefully. James, is that you? If there's no room, just say so. I understand. No, Stephen, it's a different matter. There is a place, but the essence of your work is connected with something else, so to speak, with criminal elements. What's that? The young man was surprised beyond measure. You almost forced me out of the offices of the German Foreign Ministry. You said it's dangerous for my grandson there. So here in the capital you told me about crime. Out of the fire and into the fire. I didn't know anything about it until the last minute. I only took over a couple months ago. The man stood up and went to the window. Nervously began to smoke out the window and rub the tightly wrapped. He realized how ridiculous this all looked. But on the other hand, what could he do? Nothing. He was simply confronted with the fact that he either had a job and a well-fed, secure life, or he could settle disputes between criminals at the international level. Or I'll ask Monsieur to retire, so to speak. But after that, there's no guarantee we won't make the same offer to your son-in-law. And you have a grandson growing up. What's left of your daughter, so to speak? So, James, frankly, I don't understand. I'm willing to work here in the capital. But if it's dangerous here, is it worth it to change places? It was. And my father-in-law banged his hand on the windowsill so hard that the glass ran down. They called me from the top, told me that you and I should be here. And you'll work here too. And when I'm gone, you'll take my place. And don't argue. Stephen understood, or rather, knew perfectly well how dangerous such political backstage games are. He also realized that if he wanted to be dragged into this game, he would be dragged in no matter how. So he just took a deep breath and sat down at the table opposite his father-in-law's chair. Quietly asked, "Well, suppose I agree. I'll work. So you at least tell me what is to be done." "That's a different conversation. I'll tell you briefly, and then you'll get involved." As the work progresses, so to speak, although the essence of his work was simple and clear, under the cover of diplomatic immunity to travel between countries, to help in the transportation of currency, diamonds, and even drugs, sometimes to help solve disputes between opposing criminal sides of his country, and so to speak, friendly in quotes state such an independent from the side, not interested in the result of the referee. And if his advice or word satisfies both sides, he gets his percentage and recognition in such a narrow circle. Yeah, James, you were friends, but you tell me, why should I have left Germany? You could do all this sitting in a cushioned armchair in Munich or Berlin. And here there are such passions. No, we need our presence here in the capital. That's why they killed Nadia. Couldn't they, these criminal bosses of yours? They could just tell Stephen, "Don't touch my soul. I'll do it myself." He asked why. Why couldn't the issue be resolved, so to speak, through negotiations, but he didn't get an answer. What does it matter now? Nancy, no. Maybe he didn't want to. Or was he learning to leave? Who knows? And here they've decided everything in one fell swoop. Say, Stephen, let's not bring it up. You and I have been clearly shown that they are the authorities, and we are nobody. And we should listen to them. Otherwise, they'll kill us. Mason, I hear you. Yeah, you're right. I hope you realize the danger. It's been many years since that moment. And now Stephen has already become a respected man, a retired diplomat, and a shadow referee at the meetings of the strong international criminal world. Even at the very beginning, he asked his father-in-law that, say, they have their own laws. Why would they bring in diplomats? Stephen, you understand, it's one thing for them to solve their issues according to their rules. But it's another if the solution of the dispute is backed up by the words of a diplomat. It's like God's blessing. And it's always at a meeting to solve other organizational issues of transportation. Okay, that I'm making friends with you now with these moments. Just take it on faith. And whether or not I agreed, what was there left to do? Wait for him to be pinned down. Whether by threats or persuasion is not so important. It does. He's got to get back on his feet, but he can't go into politics. Although Mason didn't really want to be. But as time went on, Stephen took his father-in-law's place at the embassy, dealing with criminal masterminds. Yeah, he almost became a criminal mastermind himself, and all thanks to his intelligence and ability to persuade and solve the most intricate issues. Stephen was invited to every serious convention. Yes, Stephen San, your intelligence and cunning can be envied even by the great Mongol himself. Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Jacob was a recognized authority, known in certain circles as Tarek, in charge of Mongolian criminal matters. If he recognized Stephen's authority, it was worth a lot. It's not praise, it's recognition of your talent. You know, some people call me cruel. But what do you say to that? In our world, cruelty is the destiny of the wise and great, but it is not in your words and deeds. Yes, it's more the province of the weak. Thank you again, but it didn't help me keep my wife, and it won't help me get her back now. I've heard of your grief. I grieve with you, honored one. But I'll speak on my behalf. You have a smart and handsome son. May Allah grant him many years. Don't forget about him. By the way, how is he doing? I hear he graduated high school with honors. He'll probably follow in his father's footsteps. No, Jacob. He's decided to go to medical school, but he's not sure where he's going yet. But I think Allah grant him a bright path and admirer's authority came out of Stephen's office and wondered if behind these words are not hidden threats. Though they shouldn't. After all, the Mongol was not the kind of man to make veiled threats like that. He could be called Stephen's only friend. If the threats were real, he would have said so directly. Mason, hello, how are you? Stephen tried not to betray the excitement in his voice, but his son knew him too well. Hey, Dad, I went to the movies with the guys. What's up? No, nothing's wrong. I just called to see if you were okay. Okay, Dad, I've learned your habits. You probably got threatened again or something. Right? Stephen mentally agreed with his son. True, there had been a couple of times when he'd been threatened by people who were unhappy with the arbitration decision, and his, in particular, thieves in the law. But if you take everything to heart, you can immediately head in the noose and hang like Judas in the hay. No, he will never let him and his son be threatened. No, son, now you're wrong. By the way, you've decided on your future medical practice. Dad, I told you. We'll decide what we're gonna do in our 5th year. In the meantime, we'll be doing general training. Okay, son, then you'll see what the housekeeper has prepared. I hope you've already packed for college. When do you have to leave? In a week. What to pack? A couple of pants and t-shirts, underwear, and that's it. Don't worry, Dad. Okay, son, then I'll be late tonight. Don't wait up. And Stephen hung up. Yes, the son has grown up. He'll soon pack a bag and be well. And he'll be on his own. Although no, there is still work at home. A housekeeper who cooks and cleans. But that's not it. The man went to the window, opened it wide open, breathed in the warm summer air, and thought about it. Shouldn't I get married again? Hell, he's not that old. Maybe he should think about what he'd been told more than once. You can't bring Nadia back. His son had grown up, and he was all alone. It pressed on him a huge weight, like a stone that should be rolled up, but it keeps trying to roll down. Sisyphean labor, that's how it is with Stephen. All the rolling of the stone upwards. What's the use? For whom? And for what? The man sat down at a wide table of solid mahogany, splashed himself in a wide glass of 10-year-old cognac, and thought about it. If he decided to marry, how would Mason take it? And even if his son doesn't mind, is it worth changing his life so radically? Perhaps it should, but who should he consult? And my hand involuntarily reached for the phone and dialed the number of the old and wise Mongol. Jacob, good evening. No distractions. Greetings, Stephen. Oh no, of course not. We're having an evening tea party, and I'm glad to have your call. I've got a little business to attend to. The man hesitated and thought for a moment. Was it worth telling his question to a stranger? But if you think about it, an outsider's view might be more objective and correct. We should talk face to face. Mongol realized that this man wasn't going to call just like that. So it was worth listening to him and giving him advice. Yes, if you can, any time that's convenient for you. All right, Stephen, I heard you. Let's meet at 7 o'clock on the waterfront. There's a lovely restaurant there. We'll sit, we'll talk. Confidentiality guaranteed. Thank you. See you tonight, then. Already in the evening, men sat in a separate office and drank fragrant coffee. What's that? The aromatic beverage was made here with perfection. It was brewed by a real Arab, and not just on gas or in a coffee machine, but on hot sand, like the tribes did in the old days. And what did you want to talk to me about, Stephen? Jacob, if you don't mind, I'd love to be on a first-name basis. You and I have been through so much. It's about time we started talking on a first-name basis. So what's the question? You see, I was married a long time ago. My wife died. Oh yeah, I think you know all that. And now my son is going to medical school. And I caught myself thinking that I'll just stay in the household, and nobody needs an old man. Jacob perfectly understood his condition, so simply continued his glory. Yes, you're right. But that's not what's bothering me. I thought maybe I should get married. But Jacob, you won't believe me. I don't even have anyone to consult in this respect. I see your point. Of course, I won't look for a bride for you yet. Unless you ask, but I'll give you advice. You're not that old, so it's worth it. Thank you, Jacob. Well, as for a bride, I don't even know where to look for one. Jacob, with my acquaintances, connections, and wealth. Let's start with where you and your wife met. We've known each other since we were kids, so it's easy. Now, I guess young people today, they want money, cruises. What can I give them? Criminal meetings or lunch? And he waved his hand, showing that he simply does not know how to get acquainted with the opposite sex young girls. And to choose older ladies, I understand. And in this respect, I cannot help, only advice. You are not so old, can find yourself a beautiful woman and create a family in relation to your son. I think he won't mind. He's an adult, he'll get married soon. And you? Tulai nodded his head in gratitude and took a drink of flavored coffee. Just then his phone rang, and Jacob quickly got ready for the meeting, apologizing for such a short visit. Stephen, with all due respect to you, I apologize. I have to run to you. Stephen, with all due respect. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to run to you. You understand, things are going to get a little bit messy. Stephen nodded his head and, rising, held out his hand. The men shook hands and parted as good friends. Jacob left, and Stephen continued to sit at the table, his thoughts flying through his head like a whirlwind. Stephen raised his hand and gestured, called out to the waitress, "Girl, can I have 200 grams of the best cognac? And please, another cup of coffee." The waitress nodded and went to fulfill the order. Stephen sat at the table, drank cognac and coffee, looked out the window at the people passing by, and caught himself thinking that he did not want to go home. There is silence and emptiness of the big apartment, and Mason's son is already on his own. He has only company and girls on his mind. And the institute, it's his job to wait for his son on vacation. Ask him about his studies and student life. That's all. And what will you hear from him? Old man? I doubt it. You're not that old. The young girl's voice made Stephen flinch and almost spill coffee on his pants. I'm sorry if I startled you. I really didn't mean to. The girl defiantly turned around and sat down at a neighboring table. The waitress came over and put glasses of pure wine and fragrant coffee in front of her. Yes, apparently, the girl is not the first time here. Since the waitress knows what to serve and how Stephen stared at the girl and almost fell off the chair. No wonder she was almost an exact replica of his first wife, Nancy. The now deceased Stephen could not believe his eyes. After all, this was his first and only love, whom he had lost many years before. And now he had found, excuse me, something wrong. The girl looked at the man who was staring at her intently. No, I'm sorry. It's just that you look so much like my wife. I hope she's not in that cafe right now. I'm sorry, but I don't think she'd like you looking at me like that. Oh no, she's not here, and she's certainly not gonna make a scene. But you're an exact replica of her. If I didn't know my Nancy, I'd think you were her daughter. Her name is Nancy. That's a beautiful name. But really, my name is Molly. That's a beautiful name too. Molly, can I invite you to have coffee with me? But we're having coffee. But we're at opposite tables. Although, if you'd like, you can sit at mine. I'd love to keep you company. Thank you for inviting me. She's a nice girl. Would you like to order something? My name is Stephen, by the way. No, thank you, Stephen. I'm having a coffee and a glass of white and clear wine. And so it began. Their amazing and fascinating communication, which gradually flowed into a closer and more trusting relationship. But that's what Stephen thought. Although at a deep level he realized that such a beauty needs his money rather than himself. And in fact, Molly Williams needed his money, his entire empire and influence. Molly came into Stephen's life, not by accident. The girl observed the life and activities of the diplomat Stephen Bracker, his son Mason, and in the beginning thought about marrying him. Molly, why do you want a son? womanize his father, and take all the money to work, painfully told Molly friend Camille. The very idea of seducing Stephen was hers. What is there to say, Molly and beautiful, and not stupid with a figure. She loves money, and not shy to share it with her only friend. All right, what about Mason? He's the primary heir. You realize if Stephen goes down, all the money goes to Sonny. I realize that. Then she'll just poison him first. What's the big deal? I'll help you. I'm a chemist by training for a reason. Or am I? Camille's plan was brilliantly simple and ingenious at the same time. Molly loved money and the good life, so it wasn't hard to convince her of her own idea. And if her friend kills either father or son, she will always have ironclad evidence against her. You won't pay your friends forever, but you won't want to. I'll tell the father or the son, and you'll go to jail. And I'll get recognition, honor, and respect. Molly understood that too. Although the desire to live a beautiful life, bathe in luxury, go to Bali and Paris prevailed. And what can I say? She thought naively, "Girl, if you do everything wisely, you can get rid of Camille in time." Molly agreed to her friend's plan. From that day on, the two conspired. All began to follow Stephen and Mason. And if with the first was more difficult, then Mason Molly laughed quickly. It came out corny and unexpected, as a friend would say. And I improvised on the spot. One spring day, things just didn't go according to plan. And Molly nose to nose ran into each other at the store. A conversation ensued with Mason. Young people liked each other and began to meet. From that moment, in the hands of the girl, streams of information about the influential father. And although the guy did not tell who his father was, but willingly shared information about his habits, where he dines, and where he likes to walk, which was more than enough for her friends. It was the information that Molly received that gave her the idea to get acquainted, purely by chance, so to speak, with Stephen at a cafe on the waterfront. And the simple plan paid off. Stephen fell in love with Molly, who didn't expect her looks to play into her hands at all. When she heard she looked like her first wife, Molly was overjoyed. Then it was possible to act quite actively. After all, she had such a trump card in her hands. Mentally, Molly lost her hands, but inwardly she was frightened. The thought of having to poison at least one or even two people. Camille, I agree with you, of course, but I'm scared. Aren't you scared of dating a father and son at the same time? You realize that at the very least, one of them will leave you. At the most, you'll lose all rights to the plan. And then what? But if we get caught? Why would we get caught? I'm poisoning Mason. But after you marry yourself, and then it's on to him. How's that for a plan? Don't worry about my work. I'm an excellent chemist. I'll make sure no one finds out. Molly shook her lips and had nothing to say to her friend's argument. She knew that Camille was a first-class chemist. She had taken all the Olympics at school in chemistry with a gold medal. She was valued at work for being able to determine the composition of a compound almost by eye. And now that she was helping her, there was no reason to doubt that the work would be perfect. Okay, Camille, what's the plan? Dump Mason and put all your attention and your beauty into Stephen. If it comes down to marriage, after you're signed, I'll slip him some poison. And that's it. You are wife and heiress. And while you're enjoying your honeymoon, I'll think of a new way to poison your aged spouse. The plan seemed simple and easy enough at the same time, and that alarmed Molly, though it gave her a chance to execute it. She thought and slowly nodded her head. Well then, let's start on Sunday and get started. Stephen likes to have coffee at lunchtime at Terry's Cafe on the waterfront. That's where I'll finish it. Help wanted at home inner exulted that the friend had fallen for, in fact, her ingenious plan to seize Stephen's money and real estate. But the girls did not know what plan Mother Fate was preparing for them, although everything began successfully enough. Molly, as if unintentionally, met Stephen, began a relationship. Mason himself quite easily and simply carried the parting of the next axis. I did not interfere with the girl in the realization of her plan. But after 6 months of meeting, spent together days and nights, Stephen decided to make Molly a proposal. The man fought long and hard about how to talk to Mason about it, but he couldn't figure it out. "Molly, how do I tell my son I'm getting married?" The question didn't take the girl by surprise. One beautiful winter morning, I invited him over for winter vacation and say, "What's the big deal?" Although he always seems to come himself, it'll be a surprise for him. Although the girl tried to make a casual appearance, but inwardly worried about how her appearance in her father's house would be perceived. Mason himself, they had known each other before, and now it turns out that she broke up with him for his father. Okay, the girl thought, we'll figure it out as we go along. And she wasn't wrong. Before New Year's Eve, Mason came on winter vacation to his father's house, where he met Molly. From surprise, the guy even stopped on the threshold of his father's house and dropped the bag from his hands. But on his father's question about what happened, did not answer anything. "Molly, hi. I understand you left me for my father and his 1 million. Asked the guy to the girl when he came out of his room into the kitchen late at night. Well, how can I put it, Mason? Realize that you're his son. I found out not too long ago when I saw your picture on the mantle. But at the time we broke up, I chose him because he's mature, romantic, wealthy. I'm sorry, Mason, you're probably right. We're all trying to build our own happiness. Molly, but you do realize that my father is not young. And if anything were to happen to him, I have the entire estate. You might get some of it, but it would be a fraction of his estate. I understand. But that's not the most important thing in our relationship. I'm a first-rate translator myself, so I can earn a caviar sandwich. And I think my father will leave me something too. It may not be much, but it's enough to get me started. That's fair, at least." Mason nodded understandingly and simply took a bottle of water from the refrigerator and left. What could you do? My father had always been surrounded by such money-hungry hotties, but once in Kosovo, he'd get them in a heartbeat. And here. And then suddenly, he decided to get married. Did Dad fail his famous intuition? It shouldn't. If it did, maybe he should give her a chance. But he didn't get that chance. The relationship between Molly and Mason as such exhausted itself, and the girl focused all her attention and energy on Stephen. Although it was not easy. Constant meetings and solving diplomatic issues on a business trip, Molly guessed what questions often solves her potential husband, and she was worried. After all, she realized that one stray bullet could derail her plans. But Stephen was as good as his word. Neither bullet nor stray blade could take him. He deftly sidestepped every trap, like a musketeer fighting off the cardinal's men with his sword. Yes, Camille, you can't imagine that he's immune to knives, bullets, nothing. We were walking the other day from the theater. I called him to the embankment, and specifically to a dark corner, but there behind the old summer theater. You know, the favorite place of the inadequate. So what? And that the interest to their family life grew not by days, but by hours exactly nothing. Molly thoughtfully stretched out and poured herself and her friend a martini. Yes, friend, you know how to live beautifully. I guess your Stephen spoils you. Yes, he does. And just imagine, he enrolled me in etiquette classes, then ballroom dancing. He says it's for my future coming out. That's what he calls his diplomatic community. I don't seem to know how to make conversation, but the way I got him. And he still got me. Oh well, that's good. Let him learn. It'll be good for me. What's he getting you for New Year's? Probably that diamond necklace I showed him in the last issue of Vogue. I don't know though. Molly shrugged languidly and took a sip of the flavored drink, carelessly flipped back a curl and flicked it back. Yeah, she had gotten lucky with Stephen, and everything was basically thanks to Camille. She was the one who'd hooked her up in such a sensitive matter. And if it all works out, Camille, I couldn't have done all this without you. So, girlfriend, if it works out, I'll make you my manager, or like the top person in whatever field you're in. That'd be nice. But I'll tell you, we're worth a lot to each other, and I couldn't do it on my own. And you wouldn't have gotten to this point without my help. And the end of this whole thing is pretty much on my shoulders. So remember, girlfriend, there's more where that came from. That's true. But let's not talk about the bad stuff. I got you a present, by the way. It's from the money Stephen's giving me. And Molly took a puffy bag out of her purse and handed it to Camille. She opened it eagerly and looked at her friend in surprise. Yes, there is money and a trip for 10 days to Bali. I know that you wanted to visit Bali for a long time, so I'm waiting for you in the new year, rested and full of strength for future achievements. And they hugged. Yes, the girls had no idea that their perfect plan would have the most unexpected result. But that would come later. In the meantime, each of the participants in this play enjoyed the New Year's Eve festivities and the expectation of a miracle. A month later, Molly and Stephen were riding in a car to the airport and holding each other's hands. On the fingers of the newlyweds sparkled personalized wedding rings made to order. And at that moment, the girl was the happiest. Stephen, you don't know how happy I am. I do. Happiness is mine. Your eyes are sparkling like these two diamonds. He nodded his head and looked out the window of the car park. Everything flashed before his eyes. But the man's thoughts were far away, all in business and worries. He didn't even notice how predatorily Molly looked at him, who every day wanted to kill him more and more with every minute, with every moment he lived. She hated her lawful husband for his attitude toward everything. The way he ate, slept, spent money not always on her whims. What was there to do? Molly asked herself, only to wait until Camille arrives, until the opportunity arises and Mason stops by in his Porsche on spring break to her father's house, when she can pour poison on his plate. Too much, when Molly thought to herself, clenching her fists to a crunch, but realized that she had no right to give herself away by word, gesture, or deed just yet, to wait, to be patient, and grit her teeth as Camille had taught her. If her friend had her looks, she could do a lot of things. Molly, what do you want for New Year's Eve? I remember you showed me a necklace from a magazine, but you know, it's out of stock. It's not that it's out of stock. It's just that you have to pre-order it. It'll take a long time, and I'm afraid you won't have a present for New Year's Eve. No, there will be a gift, but you'll have to discuss it with me. Just please don't interrupt. Molly put her hand on his palm and gently squeezed her husband's fingers. Let's agree as follows. You place an order for this necklace, and on New Year's Eve, you just give me a bouquet of roses, and that's it. Are you sure? Stephen looked at his wife uncomprehendingly. He didn't expect that. In fact, he had never had a girl like Molly. Any other girl would have thrown a tantrum. Like, give me presents, like 3 times as much, and here it's just like this. But okay, if he wants to wait, let him wait, and he'll revise the gift as he sees fit. Yes, darling, I'm a sensible and prudent girl, so I don't want to spend my husband's money for nothing. As well as to spend his future inheritance, Molly thought to herself, but didn't let it show. She really didn't want her husband to spend a lot of money on anything. Though a diamond necklace is not a damn thing, but a very profitable investment, which can always be sold as needed. So I'll wait. Stephen looked askance at his wife and smiled. Look at her. She didn't demand anything. That's why he appreciated the gesture. Already near the house, the husband gave his wife his hand and helped her to get out of the car, closed the door, and put the car on the alarm. The evening passed quietly and peacefully. Probably too quiet and peaceful, Molly said to herself under her breath. Take it from under the blanket. Husband Ivan locked himself in the office again and solves his own archly important issues. Nothing, soon all this will be over. In the meantime, it is worth enjoying a quiet and peaceful life. After all, if everything planned will come true. That night Molly had nightmares. Camille and Stephen, who for some reason were asking for help, were trying to catch her by the arms. Molly, wake up. Molly cried out and sat up on the bed, feeling cold sweat running down her back. Scary dream. Stephen, I'm scared. I beg you, don't leave me. I lost you in a dream. And it wasn't even there. They called me and asked me for help. Don't worry, my girl, I won't leave you. I'll even get you from the other side. He wanted to say he'd protect her even from the dead. But it came out like this. Freudian slip. A lot of people would say that. But as it turned out, the man's words were prophetic. A week and a half later, just before Christmas, the family gathered around the big table. Molly and Stephen, Mason and Camille, who had become almost like family in this house. Mommy, here's a present for you. And Stephen held out to the girl a small printed box. Oh, what's in it? And the girl began to quickly tear open the beautiful wrapping. And when she opened it, there was no limit to her surprise. Stephen, it's a gorgeous gold set. Yes, I'm sorry, of course. It's not the one I ordered for my wife. But oh, you don't have to worry. I'm so glad. I've never gotten a gift like this before, and I don't think anyone ever will. But I also have a gift for you and your son. It may not be as lavish, but it's made with no small amount of respect and a piece of my heart. And Camille took out from a large bag 2 packages, holding out to Mason and Stephen. So this is interesting. What's the big deal about these packages? Mason began to apply the soft wrapping with interest and was simply lost in guessing what could be there. The guy realized that with a salary to give something expensive and exclusive she cannot, but also frank fake or obscene will not offer. But when he opened it, to say that he was surprised is to say nothing. White-colored scarf, tied from the finest and fluffiest thread. It was long enough to wrap around his neck several times. Wow, Camille. Did you knit it yourself? Here you go, Mason. It's white. And Stephen is light gray. And believe me, the threads are pure English wool and of the finest quality. I hope they keep you warm just a little bit. And even if you don't wear them, they'll keep my memory alive for a long time. About Mason. I don't know if he'll wear your gift to Camille, but I'll certainly wear it. And to prove his point, the man wrapped a scarf around his neck and held his head up proudly. He made a gentlemanly bow toward Camille and gave her a gorgeous smile. Camille, I can't guarantee that I'll always wear it, but today I will wear it for a couple of hours as a sign of respect and atonement for the missing gift. And the guy also wrapped the scarf around his neck. At the end of the back, everyone raised their glasses and clinked their glasses and drank a sip of sparkling wine. Only Camillus grinned gloatingly and rejoiced that her plan had succeeded. She had long thought of how to poison father and son, but only in Bali locals pointed her to one poisonous plant, which categorically could not be touched with bare hands. It was this unpretentious and unsightly plant that emitted a strong poison and could cause asphyxiation if it came into contact with the skin, even if it was only for a short time. It was this information that pushed the girl to solve her long-dormant question about poisoning father and son, and what was there to think she'd done. So read anything and presented it as a gift. Problem solved. And the occasion was a great Christmas, and the gift itself would have looked appropriate enough. It certainly wouldn't arouse suspicion. And it worked. Camille didn't tell her friend the details of her plan. After all, everything had been agreed upon in advance, and she had just had the opportunity. If it works, I'll let you know later. No, but then we'll look for another option. The advantage of this method of killing was that few of her colleagues could detect this type of poison in contact with air and skin. He acted quickly, decomposing in the air quickly, and acted like an unknown politician. Within half an hour, 2 ambulances and a morgue car were outside the house. Molly, are you sure your husband Stephen and his son Mason are not on any medication? They haven't eaten or drunk anything new this day. The policeman's question sounded strange, but the girl realized that it was standard interrogation procedure. Yes, I'm sure we ordered food from a restaurant where everyone knows us. We go there quite often for drinks. Here, open the husband's bar. Bottle was taken from there, all the alcohol. Husband buys it himself. I don't understand what happened. We were sitting in. You please calm down and tell us what happened. Any detail is important to us. After all, you realize that your husband and his son are quite famous people, and the situation itself must be understood. Nothing supernatural happened. We ordered a dish at the restaurant in the morning, and by 7 o'clock it was hot. Then my friend Mason and Stephen got together. Then they both started choking. Although we all ate from the same table, drank champagne from the same bottle. Although no, Mason and Stephen raised their first glass with champagne. And then they poured their own cognac. There's a bottle over there, but it's an expensive drink. Molly sobbed to her heart's content. She didn't understand how it could happen that her husband and stepson started choking out of the blue. And then they just went into convulsions. The girl watched them convulsing on the floor and could do nothing, being in a stupor. Only Camille quickly dialed the number of the ambulance and called the team, and then the police ambulance. Mason was taken to the morgue and her husband was taken to intensive care. Now she and the perpetrator are being interrogated in separate rooms. Molly, I believe you. I don't even doubt your word. But the investigator got up and began to walk back and forth on the expensive Persian carpet, not knowing where to begin. The old king knew who Bracker was and realized that there were many people who wanted him dead. And this Barbie was just another one of his hobbies, albeit as his lawful wedded wife. All right, here you go. Molly, drink some water and calm down. I understand your condition, and I believe you don't know anything because you don't know anything, because you can pin the murder of my husband and his son on me. Oh no, really? That's out of the question. I'm well aware that you and your friend have nothing to do with this. So here's my card. The investigator took out a business card and put it on the coffee table. If you remember anything, please call me at any time of the day, and I will also keep you in the loop. He gently stroked her shoulder and left the room. There was nothing for him to do. After all, it was already clear that Molly did not benefit from the death of her husband, nor did she benefit from the death of her son. And if there was a benefit, then get to the bottom of it. Igor, what's our investigator? Walked into the office and looked at his partner. Noah, nothing. Just questioned Camille, the wife's friend. Yes, I realize it's nothing. Camille, good evening. Actually, not so good evening. I'm Senior Investigator Kotov. I understand you can't say anything about the essence of the questions asked. And the investigator looked at the short interrogation report. Yes, you understand, Mr. Investigator. We ate and drank from the same table. Everything was fine. And then the men started choking. I don't know why, but I called an ambulance immediately. I thought they were both epileptic. No, it was poisoning. And I found out who poisoned them. It gave her an electric shock, but she tried to pull herself together. But Molly and I ate and drank what the men ate and drank. And if we wanted to poison them, there'd be 4 dead bodies, not 2. Camille, you better calm your friend down. I see you're a girl of stronger character. We'll be on our way. There's nothing more for us to do for now. Try to calm down and get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. Camille nodded her head and did not say anything further, afraid to give herself away by a word or a question, even by a simple movement, a hand or a facial expression. Half an hour later, the house that had previously been full of life and laughter was empty. Yes, mother. Here she remained practically the sole and full mistress in the house. Camille was inwardly jubilant that she could so easily and simply put her simple genius plan into action. So it's you, Camille. You, Molly, couldn't say a word. Her friend did it all on her own and behind her back without even telling her. What if it had been her husband or stepson? What did you think? It was our plan. And it all worked out just like we wanted it to. Nobody even noticed. And you played it so natural. And Camille hugged her friend and patted her on the back. But Molly, not knowing why, pushed her away and ran to her bedroom, flooding her with tears. But also a fool. Run, run. You'll thank me 100 times later. If not, I'll report everything to the investigator. I'll say I ordered her husband's murder. Camille carefully took the investigator's card and tried to memorize the number. She did not touch her friend. She realized that she was still hysterical and could not react adequately to her words. Let you cry. She'll get drunk. We'll talk tomorrow. I should eat and drink myself. It's Christmas. When else can I sit at a table like this? Molly, don't be silly. Come out here and talk to me. But all Tommy got in response was silence, coffin-like and ringing at the same time. It made her uncomfortable. And it seems the girl threw a warm blanket over her shoulders, turned on the electric fireplace, poured herself brandy in a puffed glass, and sat down in the once legal chair of the already former master of the house believed that Stephen would not survive the poisoned scarf. Mason died instantly, and this one's still breathing. He's hanging on for dear life. I wonder how long he'll last. A long time. Molly's voice sounded so suddenly that Camille's hand trembled, and the expensive brandy spilled out onto the open fire and sparks flew into the room. Molly, I see you've come to your senses already. That's good. Have a drink with me in honor of Christmas, Camille. Do you really think it's a good time for a drink? And you're not embarrassed by the fact that it's only been a couple hours since you... Yes, I poisoned your husband and stepson, that's all. Notice, my dear, on your tip. And so let's not argue. You wanted it. And you got it. What's wrong? It's not the way you wanted. But I'm sorry. Whatever you had the brains and the money for. Molly stood in front of her friend in the doorway and clenched her hands into fists. She herself, not realizing why she was so angry. After all, there really was a pact between them. It was done. And that Stephen is still alive. But that's a matter of life or death. Camille, I'm sorry. I guess it pisses me off that you didn't tell me this was gonna happen today. That's what's freaking me out. Molly was also not a knave fool and understood perfectly well that Camille had got some solid dirt against her, and in case of something, she would easily give it to the police. Or look and will press all her life with dirt. But we'll see about that. Sweetie, don't fall into your own trap. Well, we have to make peace for now, and then we'll see. There are more important issues. All right, come on, Poor. We have to turn everything in, you see. That investigator is going to fight tomorrow. What are we going to tell him? What we said today. Not a word more, not a word less. I hope my friend won't let us down. Or remind you why we did all this together. I emphasize, together. All right, let's have another drink. I need to get drunk tonight. Molly poured himself a glass of whiskey and took 3 big gulps of scalding. The liquid flowed down her throat in a hot wave. No taste and flavor, as they show in the movies. Only the hot stream burns the temples, and all Camille looked at her friend attentively, and she became afraid not because she was drinking, but because in such a drunken frenzy she might say something unnecessary. By the way, where did you go with those scarves? Molly just now remembered the weapons, the murders. Don't worry about it. They're hanging on the chairs over there. Molly just wanted to reach up and throw them in the fireplace. Somehow she immediately slapped her arm. Are you out of your mind? Leaving evidence like that against us? Don't you dare touch that. Or do you want to follow Mason to the afterlife or the emergency room? I'd like a table next to you. There's still poison on them, but it'll wear off soon enough. There'll be nothing left of him like a magic pumpkin by midnight. Let him lie on the chairs over there for now. You're sure? I could hear a note of distrust and doubt in my friend's voice. Are you? Or do you know better than me the chemistry and all the plant poisons? I don't think so. Oh, baby. Just take my word for it. And Camille took a sip of the expensive drink with a businesslike look. She did know that poison was unstable in the air, and soon there would be no trace of it on her clothes. That was why she wore the prescription, just before leaving her house, and poured the residue into the toilet. But what confused her was that it didn't work on Stephen the way she wanted it to. Maybe the do's and don'ts. Mason, you went straight to the creator. But this one, look, he made it. They took him to the emergency room. God forbid he makes it. Molly saw that her friend was thinking about something for a reason. Yeah, Molly, here's the thing. Don't tell me it didn't go according to plan. That's right. Mason, your stepson, went straight to God. Stephen, apparently, was a little tougher. He ended up in the emergency room. You're telling me he's gonna make it? I don't think so. It'll take time for the doctors to find an antidote to whatever got into his system. And even if he doesn't die, you're gonna have to decide on the spot, aren't you? Camille, and how do you envision that? Tell me something. You go to the hospital first thing tomorrow to check on your husband, like a decent and loving wife, and watch on the spot. And then you tell me, well. Molly took a sip of brandy and nodded her head. Emotions somewhat moved to the background, giving way to logic. Molly realized that since they had started this case, they had reached the halfway point. It was worth finishing it finally. And maybe it was a good thing that Camille hadn't said anything to her, but had organized and conducted the whole thing herself. Then she would not be suspected. If possible, it would be worth it to dump it on the other person and kill two birds with one stone to get rid of the potential heirs and her compromised friend. Okay, will you come with me? Molly really didn't want to go to the hospital alone. I think I should come with you. At least I'll find out from the doctors what they know and what they've done. And then it's home on the brain. What to do with all the information we have. Then let's do it at home. I'm going to bed. Do you know where your room is? Camille nodded her head and didn't bother to answer her friend even the trivial thing, did she? Why would she want to be quiet right now? Just to enjoy the sight of the fire and the sounds. The snippets of howling logs in the fireplace. The taste of expensive cognac that she certainly couldn't afford. Lucky friend, Camille thought, listening to Molly's footsteps and mentally imagining herself in her place. But I'm sorry, Camille shadows Molly, and you certainly can't have all this wealth. Still, I can get half of it from an already rich heiress, so to speak, for my silence and complicity. The next morning, the girlfriends called a cab and drove to the hospital, where they took Stephen to the emergency room, where they took Mason's body. Molly didn't even know, and they didn't even bother with the question. Why would she need it? If anything, there is a manager, their friends and doctors. Let them deal with it. But it worried her. After all, she had never worked with poison brought back from vacation before, so she wasn't quite sure if the doctors would find its residue in Mason and Stephen's bodies or not. But thank God, it was all right for her. Molly, good afternoon. You know, we have wonderful news. We were able to stabilize your husband's condition. So we can say that that's a success in the situation we're in right now. What about my husband? He fell out of his chair yesterday, choking, just like Mason. I don't understand what could have happened. It was probably me. But so far, we can't figure out what the compound is or what antidote to use. Our doctors have tested the tissues and blood of your stepson Mason, but have been unable to establish anything, as well as in the tests of your spouse. The doctor threw up his hands. I'm sorry. Started fawning over Molly, who had been doing all this time, looking grieving and half-trapped. Doctor, what can I do? Molly looked at the doctor carefully and shook his hand sympathetically. There's nothing. There's nothing even we can do. Your stepson's body will be taken by Stephen's management company, and he'll take care of the funeral. And you can pray for your husband's speedy recovery. Molly nodded her head, and leaning her head on the side, the doctor said quietly, "Here is my phone number." And she handed him her card. "If anything, call, and I will periodically visit my beloved husband." The girl turned around and slowly walked to the exit. She also stood near Stephen's room, looked at him, and quietly turned around and went to the exit. She had heard and seen enough, and that pleased her. So the doctors had found nothing and could do nothing. Just as the local shaman had told her, Camillus was walking down the corridor, and a vicious smile played on her face, predatory lionesses, and everyone who saw her simply looked away. There's not much of a psyche going on. Already in the car, Molly looked carefully at her friend and quietly asked Camille, "What do you think?" "Nothing, it's fine. And they didn't recognize me." "That's good. It means they can't find an antidote. But I don't like the fact that Stephen's in a coma. Means the poison didn't fully affect him. Or the dose was low. Do you have any more of that poison? No. Everything I brought back from Bali has already been used on your husband and Stepson's scarf. Now we can only hope he doesn't come out of his coma. But he may not. A day, a year, a decade. He could. And imagine, people can be in comas for 20 years, but I can't wait that long. Don't do anything yet. Wait, and then this. And then you bribe the doctor to take him off the ventilator, and that's it. What's there to think about? Or should I teach you how to be and what to do? And Molly, it's okay that I practically did everything myself. It's okay that it's my husband who you ordered for me. Because Molly, we're real gangster partners now, and believe me, we're in this together. And if anything, we're going down together. Molly was shaken by her friend's words, but she realized how right she was. But what if Camille suddenly told the investigator everything? Although on the other hand, her words against Molly meant nothing. The agreement was verbal. And those scarves were a gift from Camille. So she could just relax and move on with her life. But Molly's beautiful and well-fed life, as well as her meager gifts, handouts from time to time of small sums of money annoyed her. To Tom, she simply didn't know how to get more. And what could she rip off? None of them she was related to as mistress or wife could claim property like the late Mason. Because, shouldn't I tell Stephen all about it to myself, said Camille, sitting in the study of the former owner of the luxurious mansion. She stood up and walked across the 6th carpet, inviting we her footsteps. Yes, mahogany, antique editions, books, paintings are all good. But Stephen's in a coma. There's nothing he can do, so that's the point of this plan. And what's she gonna say? Sorry, man, I read my gift with plant poison. And you never died. But it's your wife's fault. Yeah, sounds stupid. But then again, no, it's not. Just going and telling him to a guy in a coma. Camille went to the window and looked out at the rose beds. Beautiful, of course. Maybe we should go to the hospital tomorrow, while Molly's asleep, and tell Stephen the truth. She'd once read in some scientific journal that even in a coma, a person could hear everything that was going on around them. Maybe that's how he comes back to life faster, or squint faster. Still, he can't see who's telling him all this stuff. And there. But Camille had no idea how close to the truth she was. The poison really hadn't taken its full effect on Stephen. Because of all that was happening around, all the words and actions of the doctors, the man heard and understood. He understood that at one moment Camille sat down on his bed and stroked his arm. Hello, Stephen. I hope you remember me. I'm Camille, a friend of your wife's. You remember I gave you and Mason 2 hand-knotted scarves. So she got out of bed and went to the window. She turned around and looked out. She wanted to say everything, but how could she? You see, Stephen, it's all right for me to be so familiar with you. Your wife who Molly poisoned you. Do you remember those 2 knitted scarves I gave you? Well, they were impregnated with plant poison. So your son died, and you're lying here in a coma, unable to say, do, or move a finger. The man heard Camille's sorrowful confession, and he wanted not only to cry, but to scream with all his lungs, which were now replaced by the artificial respiration machine. He lay there and could do nothing. And Camille was right. Not to say, not to do, not to lift a finger. But the higher powers will help me. Stephen thought. I've gotten out of worse than this. Stephen, just listen to me. Molly wants your money and your property. That's why she killed your son. She wanted to kill you, but I guess the poison didn't work right. And now you're left to fend for yourself. If you're trying, I think you can figure it out for yourself. I don't know how, but it's your internal family dispute. The girl stood up and walked out. Camille walked down the hospital corridor and didn't know why she had come here in the first place. Why she told everything like this, only at the same time accusing his own wife of all wrongdoings. But the deed was done. And then, as it happened, The phone rang in her pocket. Molly popped up on the screen. "Yeah, Molly, hi. What's up? Where are you?" Her voice sounded worried and concerned. "I thought I'd go shopping this morning." "Why?" "Yeah, I woke up in my house." "No. When are you coming?" "Maybe I'll drive into town. Have lunch at that little restaurant." Molly paused for a second and thought, why not? It's enough to end Stephen once and for all. Getting his wife to kill him. I'm all for it. "Go ahead, drive. I'll be there in an hour." Molly hung up the phone and thought for a moment. She would have enough time not only to make a reservation at the restaurant, but also to come up with another ingenious plan to finish Stephen off. And she already knew how to do it all on her own. If Stephen could simply be disconnected from the ventilator and done by the doctor's hands, and let Molly pay for it. Yeah, girlfriend, now you're really screwed on both your money and your spouse. And your estate. Well, I'll be damned if you're gonna get it too. Smiling to herself, she proudly threw off her head and walked down the corridor. She wanted to sing at her own brilliance and at the fact that so much in this life was going according to her plan. And at this minute, Stephen lay crying inwardly. He had heard all that his wife's friend had said and could not believe what he had heard. Could Molly have done this to him? The one he loved and idolized so much. Did everything she wanted. Bought her the best. Even his first wife, he never pampered like this. And this. "Doctor, do you have to help me?" Molly almost ran to the doctor who was examining her husband. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Bracker. What's wrong? What can I do for you? I need to talk to you one-on-one. You realize I can do it in your office. All right, if you insist, come on in. The only thing is, Molly, I'd like you to wait for me for half an hour. I have to make my rounds. You know, we've got some heavy patients here. And then I'm all yours." And having escorted the visitor into the office, the doctor continued his usual daily rounds. About 40 minutes later, the doctor was sitting in his office. Across from him sat Molly, almost sobbing. "Mrs. Bracker, please don't cry. I can't watch such a beautiful girl cry. Just call me Molly. You understand, doctor? It's been a week since I buried Mason and almost 9 days since the tragedy. But every night, my stepson comes to me and holds his hands out to me. Can you imagine that?" The doctor knew the girl was under a lot of stress. But in that case, you'd have to involve a psychiatrist and a psychologist. His paraphysics are a little different. "Molly, I understand you're worried about your husband, but there's nothing I can do. The human brain is a mystery. How long will he be in a coma? Even I can't say." The doctor threw up his hands, showing his helplessness. But at that moment, Molly opened her purse and took out a few wads of dollars and tied them with bank tape, unplugging it from the machine. "Let him die is all that's required of you, and you'll get 5 times as much. Believe me, it's a lot of money, but you won't regret what you get afterward." And the doctor believed because he understood how great the reward was. Even what's on the table, it would be enough for him to live a year without poverty and a life with his family. What else is there to get? "Molly, are you sure you know what you're saying? This is your husband, isn't it?" "I know he is. And I also know that it's in your power and my will to make sure that he passes away, so to speak, reunited with Mason on the other side of the world. Molly, but you're not dealing with an ordinary man. This is Bracker. They say the devil himself protects and guides him. I don't believe in God or the devil, so I just have to take legal rights as a widowed heiress, that's all." But the doctor's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. And immediately, without waiting for an answer, a nurse entered the room. She had no face on her. And apparently, she could justify her behavior. "Igor Vasilievich, our patient is awake. Bracker has regained consciousness. It's a real miracle." Igor Vasilievich barely had time to cover the money with a magazine and immediately cast a glance at Molly. There was no face on Bracker's wife, and it wasn't that surprising. After all, it's one thing to order her husband's murder and another thing when he came to his senses. Molly thought the same thing. For from that moment on, her plans were ruined. But what followed was something no one expected. Quickly into the room. "Molly, are you with me?" "Yes, of course I am." "I mean, it really is such a miracle. My husband practically came back from the dead. The doctor and the nurse were walking fast enough, and Molly was practically on her feet. And how could she not be worried? You never know what's going to happen next." But then it did. "Doctor, good afternoon." Stephen looked at the doctor and the nurse, and his gaze fell real in the corridor, and watched from behind the glass at him. "Molly, probably call the police, and have my wife come in here. I have a statement to make." "Stephen, are you sure you need the police right now?" "Yes, in principle. You as a doctor and here is a nurse as a witness. You can record my words, or rather, statement, pleas in my death, or rather, a failed attempt to kill me and the murder of my son. Blame my wife Molly and her friend Tom. I don't remember her last name." "Do you know Molly's last name?" The nurse gave the doctor a quick glance, and when he nodded, she left the room. She gestured down the hall to Molly's room, and without waiting, she rushed to the post to answer the phone. Nurse Victoria had not expected such a turn of events in this tangled story. Although on the one hand, the wife's attempt to become a widow is a classic of the genre, while she called the police in the ward in full swing, there was a conversation, or rather, how to say, a silent battle between Stephen and Molly, witnessed by the doctor. "Molly, is there anything you want to tell me?" The look in her husband's fallen gray eyes trilling into her eye sockets. "No, but only that I'm glad you're awake like this, and it's a credit to Father. Stephen, I went to the temple, but the one near us, and I ordered a service for my repose." Stephen said it so loudly that Molly and the doctor jumped on the spot. "Stephen, don't talk nonsense. Please, I didn't ask for any repose, just for your health. And don't look at me like that." "Molly, how should I look at you? I've been told by a higher power that my murder is yours." "That's not the point, and don't even think about arguing." "Stephen, how do you figure that?" "Well, I hope you haven't gotten rid of those 2 scarves Tom gave you for Christmas." And then Molly had the thought that Camille had told him everything. But how could she? That bitch. She knew she'd take it. Yes, she'd tell her husband. But even if she did, how could he hear? After all, according to the doctors, he was in a coma the whole time. These thoughts rushed rapidly through the girl's mind, but Molly was not as experienced as her husband, and all this was reflected on her face. "So I'm right." Stephen's voice was no longer so loud, but even in the silence of the room, it sounded like a judgment. "Don't even think about running away. The police have already been called." "So what?" And then 3 investigators in civilian clothes and 2 uniformed policemen entered the room. Among them was Noah, also familiar to Molly, an investigator who looked at the woman carefully and without saying a word. He took the handcuffs out of his pocket and twirled them in front of her nose. "Well, Mrs. Bracker, shall we confess?" She was no longer Mrs. Bracker, but just Molly Williams, who had so cleverly managed to get under my side. But I had underestimated her stupidity, greed, as well as Tony's cunning. Good thing it all came out in such an unexpected way. Stephen tried to raise himself on his elbows, but his strength was not yet sufficient, and he returned to his former position with a heavy sigh. The doctor wanted to help, but the man raised his hand and stopped him. "Not worth it, doctor, Mr. Investigator. I take it." And he looked at the men in civilian clothes. "Yes, that's right. I'm in charge of your case, no. Remember the old Soviet movie?" "Yeah, same rank." "Captain Stephen, I'm glad you've come back to life. But you're weak. Maybe we shouldn't say anything yet. Testify. Any court might question it later." "They certainly won't. You take my word for it. You will first detain my ex-wife and escort her to a separate room, and I'll tell you everything in detail." The investigator looked at his colleagues, who stood in bewilderment and looked warily at each other. And what to say? After all, everyone realized that he was dealing with the omnipotent Gakjim, who was not only in the government offices, but also had connections in the world of reputable thieves and criminal lawmen. But the investigator realized that without Stephen's testimony, he was out of a job. This is a highly sensitive case. He nodded, and two surgeons instantly took Molly under their arms and led her out into the corridor. The doctor followed them, showing them where they could take Bracker's ex-wife. "So, colleagues, send someone to the house of this Tony's friend. I understand she's involved in this case too." "Yeah, you're right. I think you have her address. I mean, you were definitely at our house and took a statement." The investigator nodded his head and looked at his colleague. Professionals understood each other without words, and while the detention was being prepared, Tony Stephen lay on the bed with closed eyes and gathered his thoughts. The very decision to hand his wife over to the police had not been easy for him, but he realized that he could not go on like this. If they stayed together, Molly and Tanya would come up with another clever revenge plan. And then his wife's friend wouldn't be so stupid as to tell him everything. "Noah, my wife's friend Camille told me all about my poisoning when I was in a coma. But don't think I'm not stupid or crazy. I was unconscious, but I heard everything. And there's a security camera in every ITU room. You can see when Camille came to see me. Plus, you can hear everything she told me from her. Just by having a lip reader, if she's on camera, it's easy for him to read everything she told me. She thought I couldn't hear anything. That's why I was so candid. There are cameras." The investigator looked at the doctor, who had returned to the room. "Yes, there are, and the tapes are kept. So it shouldn't be too hard to get a video of your wife's friends. Excuse me, ex-wife's visit. In terms of cameras, we have quality cameras with wide angle and German optics. So I think it will be possible to lip-read what was said." "That's good, so I won't recount everything now. I don't have the energy, but I'll summarize it briefly. Have your Argyle go to my house and find 2 scarves, white and gray, out of the ground. It was a gift from Camille. But let them be careful. The threads are impregnated with some exotic poison she brought back from Bali. I don't know what kind of poison, but the man stopped for a moment and licked his lips. Yeah, coming out of a coma is like coming out of a long binge. Your throat is drying up, your head spinning. It's hard to breathe, too. Stephen, you should probably rest," the investigator said. "You have basically told us enough. So from now on the work will be strictly for us. If anything is necessary, we will clarify." "Yes, I guess we will. Just tell me something, doctor. My son is dead. Stephen, you take heart. But his death was easy." The man turned away from the window, and a stingy male tear trickled down his cheek. "Why should I be surprised? After all, he lost not only his wife and his time, but also his son, everything that kept him in this world." His heart was pounding frantically, and everything swam before his eyes. But Stephen realized that he had only revenge and nothing else. After all, why had the higher powers pulled him from the other world and brought him back here? Stephen turned his head and looked at the doctor, who was standing in his room taking readings. "Doctor, what would you do? Are you looking for encouragement, or do you want to know if your decision was right?" "I just want your opinion. I don't know. My wife and I have 2 kids, and even if she did, I wouldn't press charges for the kids. And that bitch killed my son, you understand?" "I understand, Stephen. And if I judge from your position, then may I not answer your question?" Tolia nodded his head. After all, the doctor's lack of answer spoke for itself. How could one denounce his wife, who had borne him 2 children? If in Molly's place had been his hope, he might never have denounced her. But the situation was just the opposite. The doctor left the room, promising to check on him in an hour. And Stephen lay with closed eyes and thought how to live now with this realization that he was betrayed by close people. What loved ones? Just fellow travelers in my life who needed my money. It's a good thing that neither Nadia nor her parents lived to see this moment. And then from the street, Stephen heard the church bells chiming, playing a melodious melody, calling the faithful to the evening service, and whether not to go to a monastery, or smiled at the thought. Yes, he would go to a monastery, though he had many sins, and tomorrow, maybe even more. But it was at these moments that Molly and Tom were already being interrogated. For everyone on the investigative team understood a very complicated crime. It is a crime involving a diplomat and actually a criminal authority. Therefore, they could not just let it go. And they didn't have to let it go. Both women pleaded guilty immediately. Molly was the first to do it, then Camille, who actually got nailed. Video from Camille's ICU. You do realize, as a chemist, that the human brain is an unexplored organ. Even if you thought Stephen couldn't hear you, you could read the lips of everyone sitting behind that security camera screen. And I don't have to read to you now what you said out loud in Bracker's room. I don't have to read what you said out loud in Bracker's room, but almost shouted at the investigators who dragged her out of her office in front of the whole staff and forced her into a dark car with tinted windows and brought her here. If you know everything, why do you need my testimony? For the record, although you have every right not to testify against yourself, I think you're familiar with that rule. Camille didn't say anything. What to say now? She could only tell herself how stupid she had been to go to Molly's husband's room and shit all over herself. The investigator, who read the thoughts on the woman's face, understood that. Although on the one hand, the investigator understood perfectly well that often people are characterized by such rash actions that come out sideways, where it is necessary to sign. Camille understood perfectly well that now she could not get away, and cooperation with the investigation could ease her fate. What's in it for me? A lot depends on who was the organizer and who was the actual perpetrator. And I'm guessing your role in this poisoning is the executor. And then it dawned on her that she might not escape from the clutches of the investigators, but she could significantly reduce her sentence. She threw a quick glance at the investigator and began to say, "You see, it was Molly who put me up to it. Promised me a position, a manager in her house, money only on condition that I would send her husband away, but I would not just send him away. That's so that no one could identify the poison. You understand? Before New Year's, she gave me a trip to Bali, but the locals there showed me a poisonous plant, and you decided to use it. Please note, Mr. Investigator, that was Molly's idea. It was her idea for the poison-soaked scarves, by the way. She kept telling me you couldn't buy an expensive gift for my husband and son, but a personalized scarf would be perfect. But I repent to her promises. Besides the position, manager, what did she promise you? Mr. Investigator, I'll tell you everything, but you tell me what I'll face." Camille belittling. She looked at the investigator, who was rubbing his pen and thinking about her question. No, of course. Camille could not go as an organizer of this murder, because in any case she will go on the case as an executor, and it is already a lesser term. You see, Camille, you are not the organizer in this case, but since we have one dead body and one attempted murder, you'll still get time. Molly will go down as an organizer, and that could be life in prison. Camille clamped her hands over her mouth and almost shrieked at the whole office. No, spare her. She doesn't want to go to a life sentence. But the investigator decided to put even more pressure on Molly Gakjan's friend. I've stated my opinion, but you understand, Camille. The sentence itself is only half of the case. You know very well who Bracker is. You realize that if you do it right, you still have a chance to get out of prison in the prime of your life. And the wrong way, the crime lords can avenge you for their comrade. Camille bit her lips nervously. She was feverishly pondering the investigator's words. She knew perfectly well that if the criminal authorities found out that she had caused Mason's death and the tragedy with Stephen, she would not live for 24 hours in a cell. What can I do to prevent a tragedy? You have the right idea, Camille. And one, tell me everything from the beginning in detail. And believe me, I'll take the officer's word for it, and I'll make sure Molly's guilt is taken into account. Maybe even get you off the hook, although I can't guarantee it. Of course, I'll try to make sure your sentence is either suspended or minimal. Thanks for that. Camille breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that she could get out of this very story, into which she had been drawn by greed and the desire for easy profit. Camille looked away. She realized that her future depended on how well she was going to get it right. "You can guarantee me that if I do go to jail, I won't be killed in the dungeons. I'll do my best." And the investigator was as honest with her as possible, although as a professional he knew perfectly well how unrealistic it was. To conceal anything in the criminal world, especially related to Stephen, was impossible. It's like hiding cheese from a mouse, which will find the treat by smell. But it was worth a try. "You tell it like it was, and I'll try to get it on the record." And the investigator supported his position in court, but that didn't help Tony much. The court sentenced her to only 5 years in prison for aiding and abetting murder and attempted murder. But even that sentence, she was glad. After all, it was not the term the court had given Molly, 18 years for the murder of her stepson and the attempted murder of her husband for personal gain. Molly sobbed and struggled behind the bars in the courtroom, tearfully praying and complaining that her friend Camille had put her up to it. But the jury and the judge were adamant. "What can you say about killing such an honorable man? Molly, you say you were beaten up by Tonya. But how could she influence you? How could she sway you to do such a thing?" "But you know, Molly, I'm sorry, but I've seen a lot of things in my legal practice, and I've seen a lot. In your situation, though, I just don't understand. How could she influence you? A smart and beautiful girl. Confuse. No. Bribe her. No, she's not related to you. She doesn't owe you money. Why did you do it? Stephen would have left you some part of his inheritance, even if not all of it." Molly only lowered her head and, burying herself in her palms, burst into tears. The girl realized that at her age, 18 years in prison is a sentence and the most painful. What will happen when she gets out? No family, no apartment, no girlfriends, no husband. And her age is not the same. It's her beauty that makes her public. It remains only to go to the monastery, to beg for alms on the porch. This was understood by Stephen, who at the time of the trial of his ex-wife has already come out of intensive care and was undergoing rehabilitation in a private clinic. At first, the man wanted Molly to be put on the airplane, the first cell to local comrades to do with her. But after thinking, he gave up this idea, asked the criminal authorities not to touch her. "But how can it be? She killed your son, attempted to kill you, and therein lies my brilliant plan for revenge. I realize that Molly will be fine in the zone with some guard or doctor. And believe me when I tell you, it'll be years away. So in." And Stephen twisted his arm, showing that Molly's sentence might not be what the court had determined. And every criminalist understood that. "And if I could ask you for one thing, bring me to the sentencing hearing." "Stephen, what do you want?" asked him by a Turk, an old friend of his. "I honestly still feel guilty about that advice to get married and not to put a cross on my family happiness. And it turns out, what? Jacob, but you didn't give me Molly, and you didn't marry her. It was my decision." "That's true. But I still feel bad for you, man. And right now I don't think you should go to Tarek's trial. I want to look into the eyes of the bastard who killed my son." He nodded, and without saying anything, went out of Stephen's room. The very next day, when Molly was to announce the verdict, under the hospital stood a car with tinted and bulletproof windows, and waiting for Stephen. Tarek himself sat behind the wheel and nervously knotted his fingers on the steering wheel. He, of course, did not like the very idea of a friend driving to the trial, but as a father he understood his condition. Tor opened the passenger side door and sat down next to the driver, looked at his old friend, tried to squeeze out a semblance of a smile. "Well, friend, let's drive. You're my driver today, and I'm your passenger. No, you're a crazy friend who needs my support. And the rest of you, don't worry about it. I made sure the verdict was announced without the ears of reporters and profit seekers, but keep your cool. Do you doubt otherwise?" The great Mongol Jacob shook his head and gave a gasp. Indeed, when Stephen entered the courtroom, there was no one there except the prosecutor and the secretary. Yes, what money can do. All it takes is a coin call, and everything falls into place. A loyal court and no reporters. But the one in the courtroom creaked zeros. The massive oak doors. The man turned his head and saw first the escorts, and then Molly, who was being led in handcuffs, quietly walking across the parquet floor. She was walking with her head held high. But when her gaze fell on Stephen, Molly commanded and began to gulp nervously for air. "Get me a doctor. I'm not feeling well." And it wasn't stage. The girl's face was whiter than the wall. She didn't expect to see her ex-husband in the courtroom. Her lips were ringing and her legs were shaking. The escort was not weak, both physically and morally. He quickly took her under his arms and escorted her to the bench. "Sit here. I'll call a doctor." He radioed for a doctor to come to room 13. Stephen stood still. He looked carefully at the once beloved woman who only wanted his money. The man slowly approached the bars and, standing a couple steps away, spoke. "Here, Molly, we meet. How are you doing behind bars? And you thought the other side was good? No, I'm alive. And don't you worry, you'll live to do your time. I'll even send you packages, so you won't starve." "Stephen, how dare you say that? It's all Camille's fault. She definitely talked you out of it. And it's all on me. It wasn't my fault." "It wasn't your fault. You let me die. We never would have done anything without you. You'll be in the same colony. Let your friend remind you of me for a few years. And when she gets out, will she send you letters for packages? I don't know. I don't think she'll have enough money to support you. But I'm certainly taking care of her. After all, I owe your friend. She told me about your perfidy. What kind of poison did you give me? You wouldn't dare take Camille into our home." Molly choked with despair. Her friend had essentially outplayed her. "No, honey, I can, and I will. She'll help me around the house, and I think she'll serve me like a faithful dog. And sometimes, I hope, she'll tell you in letters what's going on at home, how I'm living. You want to know, don't you? You don't dare do that." The girl's eyes poured with anger. Stephen did not say any more. Smiling, he walked away and sat down on a seat in the front row. He had said what he wanted to say. And in time. For at that minute a doctor and 3 judges entered the courtroom, whispering nervously about something. But when they saw Stephen in the courtroom, they stopped their debate abruptly. "Where is the patient?" The doctor looked at the girl and realized that the one most likely increased pressure will have to give an injection. "You please, you see she's being escorted in. I'm not going behind bars. I need to take her blood pressure and give her an injection." The escort looked at the chief judge, and when he nodded in agreement, he led Molly out of the bars. "Well, the girl's blood pressure is high. I'll give you that." The doctor took out syringes, a needle, alcohol, and an ampoule of the drug from his backpack. He started to prepare the injection. "Come on, girl, please put your ass in front of me. Let's give you an injection." When all the medical procedures were completed, the judge called the doctor and quietly asked, "We can continue the session?" "You know, I wouldn't do that if I were you. If time and circumstances permit, reschedule it. The patient has really high blood pressure. She doesn't need any unnecessary stress right now, unless you want to bring her to an early demise. The judge has decided to adjourn for 3 days. I'm mentally berating myself for authorizing Stephen Bracker's visit. But what's done is done. I mean, in that situation, it was unrealistic to refuse such a man. After all, his wife was on trial, albeit a suspended ex-wife. But on paper, she's still his legal wife. The judges postponed the trial. The verdict was never announced. But Stephen rode in the car back to the hospital and rejoiced. His son was embarrassed, if only a little. And Molly, they'll get what they deserve. Should I or shouldn't I take her in? No, Stephen, are you serious? In terms of what the man didn't immediately understand the question. But in terms of taking her in, I can. You're a smart man, but do you think I'm a complete idiot? No, I'm sorry. But you told Molly so convincingly in the courtroom that even I believe you. That's good. Then she believed it too. So the plan worked, about how she's gonna live her life after she's done time. Let's believe it. People like that don't go to waste. But maybe not at home. But your ex-wife, she's not gonna last. I don't know. Unless prison and local comrades teach her how. But trust me, I'm not in the mood for that right now. Mongol was driving. He wanted to ask his friend what he would do next. But the question wouldn't come out of his mouth. Why are you so quiet? Friend, you're judging. I'm not God to judge. You better tell me what you're gonna do next. I don't know. Right now, I guess I'll have to get healthy first, then clean up my son's grave. And then maybe I'll travel. My late Nancy loved to travel, but I guess it wasn't her destiny. To see Paris. What else did she want to see? I thought you were in Paris. You told me so yourself. Believe me, it wasn't the same. Now I think I'm gonna buy a backpack and a tent and a professional camera and travel. At least let there be pictures of me. If I couldn't keep my only son safe. And tears ran down Stephen's cheeks. He didn't understand how this could happen. After all, always considered himself strong and restrained, such that will definitely not show his emotions. And now here it is. You cry, my friend, cry. It's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed. And he took a sharp turn toward the waterfront. They shouldn't be going anywhere right now. They just wanted to stand and admire the water and nature. Having stopped on the embankment, Mongol got out of the car and looked around. It was a beautiful place. A gazebo, swans, a cafe nearby. Stephen, come on, go outside. Let's go help their feet in the river to feed the swans. And grab a bite to eat. What's at the local diner? It's been a long time since I've just sat around eating chebureks and drinking from a big mug of beer. You're a persuasive man. Stephen wiped his tears and got out of the car. He took out a bottle of water and handed it to his friend. I need to wash my face on my hand. I don't want to go into an establishment like this with red eyes. Let them recede a little, and then already on the beer, and streaks in the face with cool water. Stephen and Mongol stood on the shore and watched the swans swimming gracefully, how they sit and chortle. Between themselves on the shore, fishermen with fishing rods, how children run around in the sand. Life goes on, despite the grief of every person in this world, big and small. So let's go for a beer, friend, and let the world wait. Turning around, they walked into a local establishment and were pleasantly surprised. Everywhere is clean and well thought out. The interior is good wooden furniture. Appetizing smells were coming from the kitchen. A smiling Uzbek in a white apron deftly swept the crumbs off the counter and nodded his head in greeting. Good afternoon, dear ones. What do you want? Today you can order delicious chebureks. Wow. And how do you deal with beer? Better in the city. Here is a choice, and the Uzbek showed his hand to the gingerbread sticking out of beer barrels behind his back. Then 3 chebureks to your taste and a beer each. Also to your taste, sir. And my friend and I will each take a hand and take a seat at that window over there. And the Mongol pointed to the outermost table. The order was fulfilled quickly, and the dish was excellent. Despite the small appearance of the place, the men chatted over a glass of beer like good old friends, and everyone understood that even in a difficult situation, life does not end. You have to do something. Love every minute of life, even if it takes away your loved ones. Toward evening, when both of them had slowed down, they went outside, and the Mongol called his driver. Stephen, he'll take you home. And if you need anything, you call me. Thanks, man. You've already done everything I needed to do, and I'll tell you here. And now I realize one thing. You know, that friend nodded questioningly, and Stephen, smiling, told him to just live. I sat there and caught myself thinking that I still wanted to live. For all that I've lost pretty much everything, but you haven't lost yourself. Yes, I have. I haven't lost myself, and thank you for being there for me. Why don't we take a trip to the Great Mongolian Steppes? I'll show you my land. Learn to saddle young horses, hunt with falcon, and then drink tea on the threshold of the yurt and admire the cold sunset. Or he smiled and looked at the bright sun, which slowly sloped behind the crowns of trees, and imagined for a moment the picture described by his friend. It was breathtaking. He looked at Jacob and nodded his head. Let things take their course now. Life had indeed set things right. Molly was given 18 years in prison, then 5, but they didn't serve their terms in full. Then we were already 2 years and a half out for good behavior, and Molly really managed to settle in while incarcerated. As expected, Stephen managed to fall in love with the doctor in a year, safely married him. In 3 to give birth to a child and get out, not just for good behavior, but on a fabricated diagnosis. But all this did not bother Stephen, who completely withdrew from diplomatic and criminal affairs, immersed in traveling and exploring the wild corners of the planet. And what is most surprising, it was in this that the man found his solace. Stephen was soothed by ancient ruins, forgotten cities. They reminded him of the frailty of life. That's why his photos came out realistic. People seemed that they themselves were in these lands, sighed the aroma of exotic dishes, looked at people before the outer civilizations, and only organized unique photo exhibitions. Stephen, what is your success? Once asked him a journalist at one of the exhibitions in America. The man thought for a moment and smiled. He had long ago found the answer to this question, but only now he came to the point of giving an answer publicly. You know, or rather you don't know, but in each of my photos I try to find an image of my son. It could be his favorite tree or flower, or a boy who looks like him. Or maybe a boy like my Mason was when he was young. They say your ex-wife killed him. That's true. Yes, she poisoned him. But I don't blame her greed. It's one of the vices of man. And I'm flesh and blood. I blame myself for not dying in his place. And there was silence in the hall, without collusion. All those who were at the exhibition in the hall stood up and bowed their heads in a sign of respect, not for Bracker's son, but just for the young man who left this world untimely. Stephen was touched and simply could not hold back the tears. But he did not want to show his weakness, so he simply thanked the audience and stood up and went backstage. Only now he realized that for the sake of people's memory, it is worth living on this planet, and let his son have a good time there on the clouds. And he still has a lot to do. He still has so many unrealized cases and projects. Subscribe and click the bell. Lisa, holding a stack of documents with her hands in the air. She was very worried about the last thing left in the important case, the most important steps to the court. She had brought all the documents and evidence. Who would have thought it would end with this? And it all started a little over a year ago. Her mother Vanessa retired early, barely 50 years old. She worked as an accountant, and then she got tired. Tired of the paperwork, the taxes. She wanted to live for the soul. Her hobby was breeding violets from the fields. She had all kinds of violets, and blue lace varieties of blue ice, white bells, velvet purple, and flowers decorated windowsills and racks. She didn't miss the annual flower shows and won prizes more than once. And every Saturday, she went to the post office, sending cherished parcels. Her violets were selling like hotcakes all over the state and coast, and recently her husband had been helping her with her flower farming. As it turned out, Andrew was a jack of all trades and helped her with shelves, racks for flowers with special light. And so the plants grew like yeast. Vanessa laughed and often told acquaintances that they had a family business. She looked at her husband with awe and always held his elbow, now and then we put his head on her shoulder. In general, an ideal to the envy of her friends. They were married for a short time, only 2 years. It was Vanessa's second marriage. Her ex-husband was a military man by nature, harsh and fiery. At one time he had been through Afghanistan, got a contusion. Living together became unbearable, and Vanessa filed for divorce. She was afraid for her daughter. She'd been alone for many years, pulling everything herself. And then at one of the fall exhibitions she met Andrew. He was a tall man, with a mustache and a sly smile, a little bald, but with a good sense of humor, had a degree and had long worked as a teacher at a university. Andrew was 10 years younger, but just like Vanessa, he was interested in botany. They found common interests word for word, and after a couple of dates, they were suddenly married. Andrew moved in with Vanessa. Here in the old 5-room apartment, they planted a flower garden and seemed to live in a Garden of Eden. And one room he rented to some acquaintances, for which he received a good monthly supplement to his salary in the form of $800. Vanessa left the work on breeding, and in addition to the joy, brought a good income. Her plants were popular. Daughter Vanessa was already an adult, lived separately in her apartment, worked, and the happiness of the mother did not interfere. She herself graduated from the institute and found a place in the company on the recommendation of her classmates. Frank. He was still in his 3rd year and after graduation had a good seniority. Everyone's life was going their way. But one Saturday afternoon, the phone rang. Lisa was home and quickly picked up the phone. Turned down the volume on the TV. She heard her mother's excited voice. "Lisa, daughter. Bud, what just happened? My heart is pounding like that." "Mom, what happened? Don't be frightened, so you don't feel well. What's wrong?" Lisa sat on the edge of the couch. Her hands went cold. "I just came back from the post office." Going up to the floor. Under the door, naked, dead. "Well, I think he must be sick. Well, I touched his body with my shoe, and he fell out. There were threads, black, huge nails sticking out. It's like it's wrapped around him." Then Vanessa breathed into the tube, and Lisa heard her mother take a sip. Apparently, she was taking Corvalol. That's awful. Who could think of such a thing? It must be springtime. The crazies are on edge. "Mom, don't worry about it. Forget it. It's just a stupid or sick joke." "Oh, Lisa, who makes jokes like that?" My heart froze. I opened the door and jumped over the threshold without looking. I took a broom and threw it down the garbage chute. This pigeon flew down. I crossed myself and hurried home to wash my hands. I don't know what to think. Calm down. Have a cup of tea. Forget about the pigeons. You want me to come over? Lisa got up and started walking around the room, figuring things out. How long will it take to get there? No need. I feel better already. Andrew will be home in an hour. I'll go warm up the soup. Vanessa sighed and hung up the phone. Lisa stared at the screen of her smartphone and listened to the beeps. She felt uneasy too. The unpleasant discovery under her mother's door had ruined her mood. Lisa decided that she should go for a visit. But there were plans for tomorrow. She sighed at the scales in her head, shaking, anxiety, and the desire to rest after all. It had been a rough week. Clients came in like a selection from the madhouse. With the TV on in the background, Lisa sat down at her computer to finish writing an article. Meanwhile, Vanessa, having changed into her house clothes, was working on a billet. She loved to greet her husband with the table set and listen to him compliment her dishes. Andrew had gone to the landlord today to collect the rent, but for some reason he was late. The salad is ready. The pots on the stove were quiet, nodding, filling the kitchen with flavor, the assertive soup with the crunch of a huge bunch of greens. Vanessa looked at the kitchen clock. It was already 2:45 without looking. She reached for the bread and immediately yanked her hand away. Blood protruded on her finger near the handle, the bread sticking out, the pin pointing outward new silver. It fell on the table. Vanessa stared with horror, then at her finger. Blood dripped onto the freshly chopped hill. Waking up, she stuck her hand under the cold water and immediately shuddered. Andrew walked through the door with a slam. The draft made the glass in the window shrink. A pale Vanessa rushed to her husband. "Andrew, Jesus, thank God you're here. What the hell is going on?" She rushed to Andrew. He put his bag on the floor and looked at his wife confusedly. "You've got no face on you. How did you manage to hurt your hand, tripping on the laminate? So now, I wash my hands and transfer you." The water was running in the bathroom and the kitchen. Vanessa was trying to understand where the pin came from in the bread of her thoughts, interrupted Andrew. He looked in the medicine cabinet for a bandage, but he couldn't see one. Where is it? It's a new bandage, unopened. It was lying around. I remember exactly. He even found iodine, even a Band-Aid. So he shook the iodine bottle in front of his wife. She sighed and began to help in the search. The bandage was found right away. Andrew muttered something under his nose, but tied his finger qualitatively and poked his wife in the forehead. Well, we'll win, now tell me. Andrew poured greens by handfuls, still wrinkling his nose, and like a cat, looking at his whiskers. Every now and then he wiped it with his finger. Glasses shouted with pleasure-loving broth, and Vanessa, already distracted from bad thoughts, and admired her husband. It was peaceful and cozy. About the pin pigeons, she did not tell anything. And tomorrow they planned a trip to the store for groceries for a week. At night, Vanessa couldn't sleep for a long time. Anxious thoughts were climbing into her head, and her husband was quietly wheezing to himself, turned away to the window. At 1:30 in the morning, Vanessa couldn't stand it any longer and decided to drink tea. If she couldn't sleep, it would be better to spend some quality time, she thought, throwing on a terry blue robe. She quietly walked out of the bedroom and closed the door. Andrew was sleeping sweetly and unconcernedly, treading softly. Then she stepped on something. There was a crunch. It was hard. Vanessa turned on the wall sconces and bent down to look at a huge tall deer beetle lying on the floor. Vanessa picked it up and took a closer look in the light of the lamp. Wow, probably Andrew brought it from the institute and it fell out of his bag. Friends of entomology gave it to him. What beauty was put on the shelf. Vanessa put the squashed beetle in the mirror in the hallway and went to the kitchen. While the kettle was boiling, she selected a sedative gathering, pulled out her favorite cup and marmalade plate, thick flavored jam from last year's berry, and shortbread Jubilee cookies. Ah, what a beauty! Delicious! Licked the spoon, and Vanessa's thoughts were transported to the moment of berry picking. Huge human-sized thorny thickets. Oh, how painfully those thorns cut into her soft sides and scratched her arms. But Vanessa was not afraid of either insects or thorns. You've worked as an accountant for so many years, you'll never be afraid of anything. And then it takes 3 hours to make jam. But it would be worth it. Vanessa turned on the small TV on the kitchen wall, turned it down, and found some Turkish shuris. The tea conspired, and she slowly drank from the cup. It smelled unpalatable and pungent, but the jam was wonderful. A little time passed when there was a rumble in one of the rooms. Apparently, flower pots had fallen on the floor. Vanessa flinched and jumped up. She felt a little dizzy and her eyes swam. But that's where her Polly should be rescued. Tukalov in her head. Opening the door to the flower room, Vanessa eyed. In the room was wide open window. Violets fell from the sill and shattered in the ceramic window pane. And on her from the darkness looked monster with a huge foot, glowing like headlights' eyes. It was a giant black spider. He stood in the middle of the room. And then the window sashes closed sharply against the draught. Behind 3 ran the panes of the old temples. The spider jumped up with a wild roar, threw himself on a rack of flowers. All began to fall in the darkness, thrashing at the monster, smashing the racks. Vanessa couldn't get a good look at what was happening, and it flooded in, clutched at her heart. Andrew. Andrew. God, save and preserve. She thrashed again until her back was against the hallway wall, and she slammed the door faster. The noise died down. It was dark. Her heart was tearing out of her chest. Ta-ta-ta. It boomed in my ears. True. Coughing, I went to the light in the kitchen, but suddenly it was extinguished. In the doorway appeared a tall, sinister figure. Something rich stood on 2 legs and shone with huge, glittering eyes. When had it raised its hand and pointed at her. Vanessa lost the remnants of her composure and ran down the hallway with a squeal. But it was suddenly endless. The faster she ran, the longer the corridor seemed to get, and the doors to the rooms began to open on their own. The ceiling began to drop. It was about to fall on her head. Gasping, she ran into the guest room and closed the door to the shopping. But even here, the walls began to surround her and close in on her. The wallpaper on the walls went God. Black like clean hands started coming out of them. Vanessa screamed, crossed herself, and fell to the couch without memory. That was where Andrew found her in the morning. The spring sun shone softly through the window, singing the glory of spring. The birds, the shadows near joyfully at it, entered Vanessa's window. Just like that, Andrew leaned over Vanessa, his whiskers pointed in different directions. He put on his homemade glasses and anxiously, looking at his spouse, Vanessa struggled to open her eyes. Everything was cloudy, but she perked up and sat up on the edge of the couch. Her head felt heavy. Her thoughts were jumbled. Oh, Andrew, I had a terrible dream. A nightmare. I couldn't sleep. I went to get a drink. I got a drink, and I probably didn't notice how I fell asleep here. Andrew frowned, nervously rubbing the newspaper, but having collected his thoughts, calmly said to Vanessa, "Don't be nervous. During the night, a street cat got into one of your counselor's rooms and made a mess." From his words, Vanessa woke up and began to remember that huge spider studying on her Violet. It's true what they say, fear is great. So it was a cat. She was imagining things, she thought. Andrew continued, seeing that his wife was not going to faint. "It's all right. I'm already under the cops, and I'll have to go to the store for plastic pots and soil and plant everything back. And we'll use the leaves for shards." "That's a great idea." Vanessa silently got up and went into that room to look. Her flower beds were an incredible mess. Violets were piled on the floor like a colorful Turkish carpet. A huge old palm tree was broken in half. She brought it from the dumpster. The palm tree had grown to the ceiling and was pleasing to the eye. It was painful to look at now. Vanessa quietly brewed coffee and sat silently at the table. Andrew fussed, tried to calm her down, but then just slammed the door. Vasha went alone. Vanessa called her friend Maria. She too was into plants, but her heart was set on the archbishops. Maria didn't come over right away, but as soon as she picked up the phone, Vanessa was somehow relieved. "Hello. Hello, Vanessa. What's wrong?" "I just washed up after my walk. He's like a son, but you know that." Maria laughed into the phone. Jack was her elderly Iranian Spitz squirrel, a cloud on crooked legs. He didn't miss a single muddy puddle, and so every walk ended in a long, trivial routine. "Yes, Maria. I've had a bit of an accident." "Oh, bloody hell." "In a word, can you come over? You take Jack with you too. Andrew's coming. He's on a business trip. Not soon. I'm intrigued. I like mysticism. I'll come, I'll pack and call a cab." I just listened. I got dressed. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Maria stood on the doorstep with a cake in one hand and a fluffy Jack. She was, as always, on parade, short hair, gray hair, huge earrings made of rare African wood, and a long, beautiful dress in the style of Bosch. And all resting on her front paws was a chocolate leather jacket. "Where do you want the cake to go?" She laughed. "Maria, oh, what you are, just a delight to the eye. Come, I've put tea on my hands and come into the kitchen. You can take the slippers off the cherry tree. They're special for you." Vanessa was very happy to see her friend. She felt calmer at heart. Jack was happily running on the laminate floor, cutting off his pantyhose and barking enthusiastically in the hallway. He loved to visit, and he was also skillful at begging for tidbits during meals. He did not suffer from a lack of appetite and had the shape of a ball. Maria went into the kitchen. Vanessa took out beautiful cups and poured fragrant Earl Grey. There was a cake on the table. "I bought your favorite currant. There's a lot of prompter. The prompter is so thin and uncritical. Can you imagine how they baked it for you today?" "Thank you. I haven't had one in a long time. I hardly ever buy sweets. I haven't eaten my jam from the cottage since last year. I made raspberry and assorted raspberries. We only ate them all as strawberries. clinging to them. Andrew, I took half of it to my daughter's favorite. I don't know if she eats it or took it as a courtesy. Vanessa opened the cake lid to the fiddler and cut off 2 weighty tastes to herself and her friend. They started tasting. Good cake, the freshest, just Vanessa. Tell me what the hell is going on. Maria glanced around the kitchen. Vanessa swallowed a piece of cake and looked at her friend expressively. But it started. Yesterday I came back from the post office and found a dead pigeon under the apartment door. Not just any dead horse pigeon with nails and string. I'm sorry, it's not for the table. Of course, Vanessa can't spoil my appetite. I mean, what's with the string? The nails were big. Teenagers must have planted them. A lot of people have a bad head, but they look at all kinds of stuff on the internet and do crazy things. Vanessa twirled the cup in her hands and started picking at the cake with a spoon. I called Lisa. That's what she told me. And then when I was cooking in the kitchen, I punished my finger with a pin. It was sticking out of the bread, like someone had stuck it in there on purpose. Vanessa showed her ring finger. There was a puncture mark on it. That's a worrying sign. You have a lot of strangers in your house. Maria's more serious. Even Jack bored sadly under the table. He sincerely did not understand why he had not yet been given a cake. Maria twirled the cup, looking at the puppies so that they can spoil. Have you gotten any ill-wishers? Vanessa, you sell the best violets, business, and nothing personal. I sometimes have customers. They come home for orders. If I'm not home, Andrew gives them flowers. On Saturday, neither Andrew nor I were home before lunchtime. But on Friday, there was a real pilgrimage. 6 different women. They came one after another in the evening. And I had everything ready. Andrew gave everyone flowers on a list. I went to the theater with a classmate. She invited me to the play, and I got home at 12:30. And before lunch, the post office had no bread. So some chick gave me a slip. Probably your competitor slammed her palm on the table. She was sure of what she was saying. The arrangement with the competitor seemed to her quite logical. And to do what? How do you know if there is spoilage or not? I don't know anything about it. Vanessa looked at Masha as if she were a lifeline. Oh, I haven't told you about the dream yet. Last night, a cat climbed in the window and bombed my whole field. It's definitely a curse. And a black cat is not good. And these nightmares of yours. We should look for a psychic. The question is where to find a real one. Maria was thinking. A piece of cake fell from her spoon to the floor. Jack, who surrendered her legs, cut the biscuit in a flash, and his eyes bulged even more in anticipation of the continuation of the banquet. But the hostess was engrossed in other thoughts and did not notice him. Father Andrew told all. No, I didn't want to disturb him. He's a superstitious man. But I think I'll tell him anyway. It's been uncomfortable, Vanessa. In order not to aggravate the situation, Maria began to tell her friend how she flew to California to her son because her grandson was already a year old. She went for 2 weeks. Showed from her phone pictures of the ocean. High houses, told how her son and daughter-in-law took her to an absolutely incredible water park. She almost met a very imposing male lifeguard there. I was like a champagne cork popping out of that tube up top. While I'm doing laps, so madly we serpentine. I was literally lost, and when I was finally in the pool, I couldn't figure out where the top was and where the bottom was. I can feel it. So strong hands picked me up and put me down. The pool was barely a meter deep. A smiling Mexican man, rather large and bald as a billiard ball, put me in. I saw my reflection as in a mirror. Maria laughed and surrounded me and barked happily too. Vanessa sounded the alarm. Then Will showed me the city, a completely different life. I'm glad he's working, and his life is interesting, but I feel more at home. I miss it, of course, but at the same time it's good to do what you want. You can live for yourself. I'll fly to my son for his birthday this summer for a whole month. He'll be happy. I'm for you. I'm really good. I found myself too. Yes, I have my favorite violets, but my cat killed part of my collection. Well, I've already put some of them on my skull. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. How is Lisa getting married yet? Maria, what kind of marriage is she working on? She's got a career. She's a manager at a company. She's running around doing client work, selling software for universities, schools, various offices, and it pays well. But she doesn't have time for a personal life. Sometimes she goes out with her friends on weekends. Vanessa was drinking tea and looked at her watch. Oh, Andrew will be back soon. I have to make dinner and get started. I know I'm getting ready. We've started, we've chatted. It's time to do the honors. It's time to go home for lunch too. My poo pilot, my freak nickname, Maria lifted my pet in her arms and went to the corridor. We really had a good chat. I feel more at peace now. I'll talk to Andrew. We'll think about what to do. Vanessa stood up to see her friend off. That's right. You should talk to your husband about this. He's the protector. But call me when you find a psychic. I wonder what Maria will say, hugged Vanessa, and left for the elevator. Vanessa put the cake in the refrigerator and decided that if she was going to rest, she would not cook, but would make dumplings and salad. Andrew really likes dumplings, doesn't he? Andrew returned with bags of groceries and a pile of pots. He was very tired after a shower, with great enthusiasm began to take away hot dumplings, abundantly approving them with fatty sour cream and green onions. He told her how his day had gone, asked for more, and he and Vanessa proceeded to drink tea and candy in the living room behind the big TV. There Vanessa realized that her spouse was fed up and calm, and it was okay to tell him everything. She left out part of the story so as not to spoil her impression of herself, but otherwise she dumped everything on him as it was. He listened, frowned, didn't interrupt. Then he took off his glasses and, having checked them, put them on his red and ruined nose. That's how it is. He stretched out. At work, a colleague told me a month ago about that his wife made a spell, and he went to a lady second, or something, and she helped him. She took it all the way, and he divorced his wife. And it came out that both his sons weren't his, but a friend of his from high school. He gave me his card. I'll look it up. Might make you feel better. You're so smart, Andrew. You're a gold mine. I'll call that fortune teller tomorrow. Maybe it really is a spell. Monday morning. The alarm clock rattled under my pillow. Lisa was adamant. Disagree with him, but which one? It's 7 o'clock. She'd only gone to sleep at 2. Fumbled for it. She looked with one eye at the smartphone screen. But why? Why? 700. I didn't even have time to sleep. I hate mornings. Lisa fell face first into the cool pillow. She wanted to fall into Pillowland, where there were always cool pillows, a cozy blanket, and no worries. But the drive to the center was not a short one. It took an hour and a half to drive. Lisa pulled herself off the pillow with an effort of will. The room was unpleasantly cold. The open window could beat the heat of the radiator, and the room had cooled a few degrees overnight. A hand in the heavy, shaggy cold. She tiptoed to her slippers. Walking across cold laminate flooring and warm shawls was absolutely not what they wanted. They wanted to carry away the mistress, the warm plush plates. In the bathroom, Lisa held her hands under the hot water for a long time. Cold fingers would not warm her in any way. She sat on the edge of the tub and frantically did the washing up a few times and ran to the kettle. Lisa had a studio apartment, so the only room at once was both kitchen, living room, and bedroom. Found herself with half a liter of sweet tea and warming up in the microwave. A cheese sandwich. She turned on her laptop at the table to look up the latest news, quotes, and find some interesting video on YouTube. At the same time, she sent the editor a story, so she wouldn't be so sad about going to work. She turned up the volume and turned on some funny cat videos. She only realized it when the phone rang. The male voice on the other end was offering loans from another bank with a very favorable interest rate. Lisa didn't listen to the offer until she saw that it was 8 o'clock, and in half an hour she should be on the bus to New York. Why am I sitting there? I'm late. The important thing is not to be late for work. Lisa sat down, trying not to forget her charger, laptop, and makeup on the way, quickly throwing on her coat and jumped into her favorite battalions. She sank down, slinging a weighty backpack over her shoulder. What followed was an exciting ride. She caught the bus at the last second. As it should be, it was packed to the brim with scowlers and castle dwellers. Me on this sunny April morning. Everything was still crumpled. The man with the vigor gripped the air in tightly and loomed over the man sitting in the headphones. The student, he mused, was asleep. The toxic mixture of booze and cologne was no match for him. The almost undressed girls were chattering at a deliberately loud volume. It was spring. And now it's summer, Roma. Shouldn't we liven up the bus atmosphere? Was he coughing hoarsely all the time? A woman at the window couldn't stand it and started cursing. She was being shoved in unison by grannies with huge carts full of underpants for sale. Lisa stood flush against the driver's cab and clutched her backpack to her chest. The headphones lay there as well. Trying to drown out the unpleasant sounds, she closed her eyes and imagined that she was now on the sea. The noise of the road was the churning and rumbling of the waves, and the women's voices turned into cackling more often than not the cries of seagulls. "Of course I'm awake," someone shouted in her ear. The crowd poured out of the bus into the stream of people rushing them to the subway entrance. Lisa jumped in and merged with the crowd. On the subway, she pulled out her headphones and fell into her playlist. She got to the office on time. She said hello to the second manager, the accountant, and plopped into the cold chair in front of the monitor. Exhaled and pulled out her laptop. It was cold, and she set it aside, warmed up on the edge of the desk, closing her eyes. She put her thoughts in order. Sleeping in the workplace. The loud voice of the principal made Lisa literally jump. "Max, I'm just loading my CPU to work efficiently in the office. Did you give me a scare? Way to go, processor. That's good. Here's the thing. I need to call the client. There's some kind of software malfunction. Take Frank and double-check it. The money's going to another company. You got me." Max gave Lisa an expressive look. She looked between his eyebrows. Max had a slight squint, and she could never decide which eye to look at. "Yeah, I get it. I'll go figure it out." "Well, great. I look forward to hearing from you. I'll be myself." Max called out, nodding his office keys, walking towards the coffee machine. Lisa looked sadly at the cosmetics and went to find Frank. He was working on the second floor. She went up to his abode. Frank was a classmate of hers. He was the one who had helped her get a job here. Their agreement was that she was to buy him coffee periodically, specifically caramel. Lisa walked over and placed a hot cup in front of him. Frank turned around and took off his headphones, looked up at Lisa and smiled. "Oh, hi. Thank you for the coffee. What's your question for me?" "Max asked me to double-check the job. It's the ones that sell jewelry or express. There's always something wrong with their website, and the recalculation program is glitchy too. This is the third time they've sent me a complaint, and today they complained to the director. Please check it again." Lisa sat in the chair next to me. "Yeah, let's see what they've got." As the weekend passed, Frank drummed his fingers on the keyboard like an expert pianist. Windows popped up one after another. He opened up the morning of the site. Sunday, we had a photo shoot with some friends. Then they went to the movies, but on Saturday just slowed down, thinking whether to tell or not, but decided to tell. And on Saturday, Frank was waiting for a sequel. My mother called me and said that a dead pigeon was thrown under her door with threads and nails, and she was really freaked out, wasn't she? Wow, I can imagine. Good thing it wasn't a pig's head. That would have been worse. It's a very popular intimidation technique in the mafia. It goes way back. Thank you. What's missing is the pig's head. Do you think it's a joke, or was it really meant to scare? My mother grows violets. She's not a politician or a criminal. So I found it. We'll fix it and it'll work. Let the client know what's coming up at lunch. All set. Liz will check it out. Don't worry about it. Forget the pigeon. Lisa went to work. It was still a busy 5 days until the weekend. Monday morning was Vanessa's morning. She got up early and prepared to protect herself from spoilage. She had read on the internet that she should wash the floor everywhere with salt. A task for such a huge apartment is not for the weak. So Vanessa decided to take a less radical approach by simply sprinkling rock salt in the corners. Deciding that half the job was done, she walked Andrew to work and got up the courage to call the number on the business card. The black cardboard had a balloon, candles, and it said that Emily, a practicing magician, would remove any spoilage, evil eye, or hex, bringing her husband back into the family and sparing her children a burrow for it with a sigh. Vanessa made up her mind, dialing a number. She waited for the voice of some grandmother, but she was answered by a young girl, listened kindly, got into the essence of the problem, and made an appointment at her magical office. Vanessa exhaled for that evening, wrote down the address, and assured that she would be at the specified location by 6. She spent the day in some suspense. The wait dragged on. Asked his long Turkish cereals and transplanting violets. The work argued. It was light again in the flower beds. Dented violets perked up and stood in even rows, and their broken leaves protruded from the many cups waiting for babies. Finished Vanessa made a photo of all the cups of seedlings and posted on the site in the sales section. Palm she is, and abundantly innocent, and tugged tightly with duct tape. She still hoped the palm tree would come together. Finished with the plants, she had a snack and some spaghetti sauce she purchased at the grocery store the other day. It tasted fatty and sour, but it had a hint of basil. I couldn't get a bite down my throat. So Vanessa made herself a sandwich with raspberry jam. There was no bread left. Half a handy bun. Fresh butter from oak and raspberries went very well together. The world sparkled with new colors. Looking at her watch, Vanessa realized it was time to get ready. I don't know how much the consultation will cost. She took $800 from her stash. She carefully tucked it away in her red leather wallet and put it deep in her purse. She took a cab. The car took her quickly to her destination. The magician's office was on the basement floor of an old building on Park Culture. The basement floors there were arranged for workshops, children's circles. Vanessa walked through the wrought iron gates into the archway and found the right door. She took out a leaflet with the code from the intercom and carefully pressed the worn gray buttons of the door clicked. Vanessa saw a dark staircase. Leading downward pulled the lobby of the house as if from a crypt. Vanessa braced herself harder, tangled her volunteer, and clutched her purse to her chest. The steps were old, covered with green paint. The walls and ceiling of the basement were painted the same way. Vanessa went down and saw a black door on the left with a peephole on the side. On the wall was an old doorbell, dusty and gray. On one wiring, it did not inspire confidence, and she did not want to touch it at all. I had to knock. Timidly at first, then more confidently. Vanessa knocked on the door. There was silence on the other side. Then, somewhere far away, footsteps were heard at the door, behind Falcon's Key. The door was opened by a young woman, a huge, thick mop of copper, almost red hair and very dark makeup. Her yellow eyes seemed huge in her face. She had numerous heavy bracelets on her arms, and on her chest hung a round pendant of silver Amazonia. "Hello, you Vanessa, come in." The sorceress gestured toward the back of the room. It was bright, but it was gloomy. A light bulb burned dimly above the entrance. The air was dusty, stuffy, the kind you always get in basements where there is no air. To the left and right laid old dusty furniture, some paintings in a row of Smarties and a crackling, knowing wooden easel. Vanessa looked curiously at the furnishings, and from the back, she heard a voice as if giving answers to her thoughts. "There used to be an artist's studio here. He died a couple of years ago, and I rented it out. You go on ahead. There's a chair. Sit down, tell me." And indeed, there was a rather large room. There were chairs along the walls, and there was a large window under the ceiling, part of which was covered by the road. You could see the feet of people passing by, the cold air from the street. Vanessa sat down at a chair open, burgundy, velvet, tablecloth. In the middle of the table stood on supplies and candle holder their multicolored candles and a crystal ball on a bronze stand. Emily, a magician in some generation, sat down across from her and pulled tarot cards from a wooden box. "Talk to me. I will make a diagnosis and we will discuss further stages of work." Emily Insight looked at Vanessa. She, like her tongue, swallowed, empty in the head, doesn't know what to ask. I gathered my thoughts and briefly told her story. And then she asked me a question. "Do you think it's a spell?" "I'm very worried." "Let's find out. Let's see." Emily took out the cards of the beast again and began to turn them over carefully. One card, two cards, three cards. Looked at Vanessa, shook her head, opened the fourth and finally the fifth. Turning the last one over, she showed it to Vanessa and poked it with her index finger with a bright red manicure. "This is the devil's card. You're definitely spoiled." "Oh," Vanessa blurted out, and she expressed her purse on the floor. "What am I going to do?" She hastily bent down to pick up the bag. "First of all, it is necessary to do a purification and then to put protection on you. It will take at least 3 complex rituals. The spoilage is serious. If you don't do the right rituals, you'll go to the other world in a couple of months." Emily was putting the cards back in the box. "So I'm a serious person. What do we need to do? Can we start this cleanse now, before it's too late?" Vanessa looked at Emily hopefully. "We can do the first stage today and the next one in about a week. You will need to prepare, and we will do the ritual at midnight on the waning moon. Just before the new moon now. The first stage will cost $400. But if there's resistance, it could be more expensive. Then there's money. I brought 20,000 with me. Doing the ritual. That's great. Now put your purse on the table for now. You need to sit up straight. Put your hands in front of you on the table. Now I'm going to fix your eyes and begin to curate the herbs for you. I will place 3 candles in front of you, yellow, red, and green. The ritual will go on until all 3 candles are burning. Then I will throw them into the water. Now I see your eyes relax and think good thoughts." Vanessa tuned into the process. A clear, dark blindfold was placed over her eyes. She heard footsteps and lit a match. A metal plate of herbs was placed in front of her. A sweet, pleasant aroma of burning herbs floated through the room, and the paper had a quiet warmth. Emily mumbled and muttered some sausage of words. Vanessa didn't notice that she had fallen asleep. She woke up to being touched lightly on the shoulder by Vanessa. Everything had gone well. "The first purge took a lot of effort, but we got through it. Now you need to rest, and I'm waiting for you. On Friday, we will do the ritual early to consolidate the result. That'll be $500. I think I fell asleep. I feel so light, so happy. A weight off my shoulders. Thank you." Vanessa felt so uplifted. She wanted to love the whole world. She felt like she was 20 again, and it was spring. She handed the money to Emily and jumped outside. It was already 9:00 p.m., and Vanessa decided to walk to the subway. She admired the light of the yellow street lamps, looked at the old houses with stucco. She sighed cheerfully and air of evening New York, and reached home unnoticed. Andrew was waiting at home. He met his spouse in the hallway and looked at her expectantly. And Vanessa sat on a chair and smiled. "Andrew, it's great. I got help. My soul is singing Andrew." Andrew hugged Vanessa and sighed. "Let's go eat. I fried cutlets, made mashed potatoes." Brandy girls playfully nodded. He stood in front of Vanessa. "Come on, Andrew." She waved, taking off her boots. At night, Vanessa slept as soundly as she hadn't slept in a long time. The day had ended well, and at Lisa's, in addition to her paycheck, she got quarterly bonuses. They walked to the subway with Frank. He told her stories of his life. He'd had a hobby for a long time. He collected bone computers and often went to clients' homes, took a system unit, and refined it in the workshop. What he didn't find inside the old computers. The classic variant is eternal dust on the wheel and mother's dress. Problem solved with a vacuum cleaner. He once found a real hamster mummy inside. He later learned from the owner that their pet had been missing for 3 years. There was another interesting find. Inside there was a warehouse cap from pens, rubber, all sorts of little things, which was driven under the system unit by the owner's cat. Frank kept hoping that he would find someone's forgotten stash, but the only valuable finds were a few ruble coins. One day, he was fixing the upstairs neighbor's computer. The work dragged on. It was summer, and one day they started replacing the central heating pipes in their building. All the apartments from the 12th to the first floor had their old pipes and radiators cut off. The neighbors' lives changed overnight. A big hole from the pipe connected all the apartments, but friendly neighbors of the 6th and 5th floor did not miss the opportunity to take the problem to the plus side. Now they have a point. The transmission is even better than sports. Through a hole in the ceiling Frank received from a buddy, then a flash drive with movies, then a can of beer, or they could just chat about life. The audibility was perfect, but the fun had to end sooner or later. New pipes were brought in, and the hole in the ceiling closed again. The installers started welding from the attic. In the room of every resident of the 12-story building there was a gray, welded new pipe. Frank didn't care what kind of pipe was in the room, but not Martin, the upstairs neighbor. No, his perfectionist nature couldn't stand it. That squalor in his bedroom. Martin bought expensive paint, picked strictly in color. Everything had to harmonize with the interior. When he went out for a smoke, he told me how good he was for painting the pipe himself. How long did he and the master take to find the right shade? It's a gorgeous orange caramel color. It's a little steamy, but beautiful. Frank, of course, was pleased. He said it was a very beautiful pipe. But aren't you being a little hasty, Martin? Maybe there's more work to be done. To which Martin dismissed it. But the next day, the workers realized what they were missing. It was inconvenient to weld pipes in the basement, so they decided to just yank the pipe up a little and down. At 10:30 in the morning, they pulled. The Martin pipe disappeared overnight and appeared at Frank's beautifully. With a light vapor, it glistened against his gray loft-style wall. From above, Martin shouted. Meeting from the balcony in just his underpants, he called out to Frank, "Give me back my pipe." Or rather, Frank squeezed the bends into 3 dead bodies. Martin sat on the tiles from the balcony. It was unclear whether he was crying or laughing. But he couldn't smoke. "I told you not to hurry. It's my pipe now." Of course, Martin ordered new paint, but painted the pipe only when the workers assured him that all the work was finished. At home, Lisa remembered Frank. He was so cheerful. He was nice and easy to be with. Perhaps she didn't go to work just for the paycheck. The long-awaited Friday came. All week, Vanessa had been preparing for her second ritual with a list of essentials and instructions. Emily had sent it to her in the mail. Everything was strictly point by point. The first was to throw a coin over her shoulder every day while walking, at the same time imagining that the coin leads all the bad thoughts forever. The second was to do foot baths and wash your face with salt water every evening. The third is to bring a piece of raw meat or liver by Friday. The third item made Vanessa uncomfortable. If throwing a coin, washing with salt water, raw meat went nowhere, but she was determined to buy a piece of liver from the store in the morning. Vanessa waited for the evening. Andrew was frowning for some reason, and every time he opened the refrigerator, Vanessa sighed heavily. Maybe it's not worth the ritual. Fry it with onions. But Vanessa was adamant. Andrew sighed and decided to go to the dacha to prepare the house for the May holidays. Vanessa let him go because business is business. And today she had magic to do. Tomorrow is the post office, and there will be other things to do around the house. Andrew packed a bag, wished her good luck, and kissed her as he left for a business trip for the last time. The smell of his perfume with a hint of whiskey remained in the hallway, and Vanessa decided to watch some life-affirming movie on TV. She put the chicken in the oven and sat on the kitchen sofa with the remote control in her hands. For about 40 minutes, she bounced from channel to channel until the kitchen became filled with the taste of inferior, flavor forbidden with vegetables and chicken. The air wanted to be eaten with a spoon. That was the signal that the dish was ready. The bird was seared. Taking out the chicken, she separated herself a ruddy screen, poured pomegranates of your juice, and had a delicious dinner. Before leaving, she put the liver in 3 bags, called a cab for a half-hour drive outside frost. Spring rain, a coarse rain that washed away the remnants of snow piles. There was standing water under the trees. The ground slowly soaked up moisture and chewed the trees, cursed the first leaves of the birch. On the lilac bushes, burst buds were climbing featherflower. On the flowered, brightly burned orange, purple headers of the exhibition. Vanessa marveled. Such brightness in the middle of a gray city. Well, here she goes down to the basement again. So much for Emily coming out. Today she had that high ponytail and was wearing a silk dress and robe. She politely invited Vanessa in. There were candle holders with black candles on the table. The window was behind a looming black hole and smelled of scandal. The dusty air stood in murky columns. Vanessa sat down at the table. "Did you bring raw meat?" Emily asked. "Everything was done as I wrote." "Yes, of course, everything on the list. I bought fresh raw liver at the store." Vanessa held out the bag. "Great." Emily took out a copper basin from under the table and put it on the velvet tablecloth. The liver and brandy fell out of the bag and into the basin, smelling of metal and blood. Vanessa watched as Emily went into the next room and brought out 2 bottles of red wine and a snake glass. "Vanessa, I'm going to pour you the wine now. In the glass, I added some magical herbs. While I pour the wine into this liver, you should have time to drink. In the meantime, I will recite the incantation. All the evil from you will pass from you into this flesh. Concentrate." Emily poured Vanessa a glass. Dark stumps began to rise from the bottom. They swirled like a tea brew. Something inside resisted. Vanessa didn't want to drink this wine at all. But she didn't want to back down either, so she bravely took the glass and prepared herself. The witch raised the bottle of wine on her pelvis and began to mutter a magical incantation. Vanessa tasted the drink. The wine tasted like crap. Sour taste, like a mountain with a bitter aftertaste of wormwood. Before Vanessa's eyes, red wine with a pungent odor of alcoholic surrogate poured from the bottle on the liver. Meanwhile, Emily was reciting spells louder and louder. Finally, exploding into a scream, she threw the bottle on the floor. Vanessa finished drinking and wanted to put the glass on the table. As Emily snatched a copper dagger from under the tablecloth and swung it at Vanessa, she shrieked as the blade swung across Vanessa's face. Blood and wine splattered from her liver. And Emily screamed, "So be it," and folded her arms in front of her. Everything was going according to plan. The ritual was over. That was all. Vanessa asked shyly, "Yes, we're done with your $600 for today. Since the work is very serious, we need to keep the balance of power. I buried this liver at the crossroads tonight. Are you watching the dark forces? They might start scaring you into not coming here anymore. But you watch for the signs, take notes. And I look forward to seeing you on April 13th for the final ritual. Assuming, of course, all goes well." Emily conjured up the candles and turned on the chandelier. Vanessa sat confusedly in her chair. The sum dumbfounded her as it was double the previous one. But having nothing to do, she held out the money. This time, there was no mental uplift. Inside was empty, exactly the same as in the wallet. There was no joy in my stomach either. I had to call a cab. At home, Vanessa had a digestive upset. She spent the night anxiously running to the restroom. But by morning, she felt incredibly light inside. And she even seemed to have lost a few pounds. Feeling uplifted and proud, she decided to call Lisa. She wanted to tell her how well she had thought of going to the magician, and that there was one more cleaning left, then protection, and she would be saved from spoilage. She was the only one who never found out who had done it. But she decided it didn't matter. It was all about protection. After waiting until 11 o'clock, she dialed Lisa. She didn't pick up right away. Hello, hello. How are you? What's new? I was in the shower, so I didn't hear the call right away. At that moment, Lisa was sitting on the edge of the bed, tangled in a fluffy towel. Lisa, hi. It's good to hear from you, sweetie. How are you doing at work? Everything's smooth. Vanessa was mentally hugging her daughter. I missed her so much. Well, the week went by really fast. The orders were few, but all in good amounts. Frank and I exceeded the plan. Seems good. That's it. I'm free tonight. Let's go to the cafeteria, have a chat. Oh, I don't know about the cafeteria. My stomach's been churning all night. Why don't we go for a walk on Arbat at my place? It's a sunny day. I've got some news. I'll tell you. Vanessa made a conspiratorial tone. All right, I'll be at your place in 2 hours on the highway. You're my schemer. By the way, Andrew, what's not at home? He's at the dacha getting ready for May Day. It's a little early, but better early than late. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye. Vanessa hung up the phone and looked out the window. It was getting warmer. Green or clouds of delicate foliage on the bushes were quickly flying joyful insects. Birds were bursting, competing with each other and singing. And against the piercing blue sky, the breeze played the humble birch trees. Vanessa spotted a small ladybug on the horse frame. The orange bug crawled upward, looking for a way out. Vanessa opened the window and gently nudged the insect into the fresh air. The bug wasted no time and flew upward, turning into a dot. How nice, Vanessa thought. I should dress up. I want to be just as bright. Vanessa pulled out a dress and large pearls from Vasilkov's closet. She jumped out of the house like a butterfly. Music was playing. Signs flashed on all sides. The people of the metropolis were walking. Vanessa was engrossed, looking at the painted Matryoshka dolls. They were brightly colored, perfect souvenirs for foreign tourists. That's where Lisa met her. She came over and quietly touched her shoulder. Hi, Mom. What's so interesting? Oh, you're here already. I was looking at the souvenirs. It's all very, very colorful. Vanessa put the nesting doll back. The salesman was glumly reading a newspaper. Radio Shanson was playing nearby. Well, shall we go? Why don't you tell me what the news is? Yeah, I think I'll have a coffee too. It smells like baked goods in here. The whole street's trying to tempt me with something delicious. They walked towards the credit card and coffee stand. The sign had all sorts of pretty pictures on it. There's a pink pretzel with strawberries, fried, bacon, tea, coffee for every taste. Lisa chose a large cappuccino and a poppy seed bun. And Vanessa decided to try lattes with raspberry syrup. Raspberries were her favorite, and the berry smells like lax to you. A very small Lisa. There was a faint steam coming from the glass. Vanessa tasted the hot drink, the flavor of coffee and bright sweet raspberries. Very hot and intensely sweet. But I like it. Vanessa smiled. Lisa, how do you feel about magic? Suddenly, she asked her daughter. I don't even know. Are you stumping me? Never thought. Lisa raised one eyebrow questioningly. I went to the witch. She said I had a curse on me. I've been cleaned twice now, and I'm over it. Vanessa helped me so much. Lisa's eyes widened as she shyly looked away. She couldn't decide how to react. After all, she's a sensible person. What spell? What sorceress? Mom, my God, you're not kidding. Did you really go to some fortune teller, not a gypsy? Of course not a gypsy. I was put in touch with Andrew, a hereditary magician. She's serious. Vanessa frowned. Lisa couldn't believe her ears. Her mom's an accountant, a man who only trusted numbers. And suddenly she went to some magician. Mom, how much did you pay her? What spoilage? It's all a hoax. Lisa, I'm an adult. I understand what you're going through. But trust me, it's true. It was a woman who did the reading. The cards were so ugly, and she did rituals, spells. They helped. Vanessa started to get nervous. She was waiting. Though what could she expect? Young people have become so pragmatic. They only believe in money and their gadgets. I thought you'd be supportive and happy. Money is not important. I won't argue, but please be careful. I don't trust these magicians. Lisa wanted a cappuccino and a walk. Lisa, I need money for the last ritual. I don't have enough. I'll pay you back for sure. Vanessa looked piercingly at Lisa. Mom, how much $100 do I have on me? No more. That's right. One last ritual. Lisa reached into her purse, but Mom stopped her, stunned by one phrase I need. I've decided to stash everything and no more. I have to finish the job or something bad will happen. Mom, I can't give you that kind of money. And you're taking it to that Charlotte Anka. Yes, I'd better add it and go on vacation or buy new clothes. Mom, are you scaring me? Lisa threw the uneaten coffee into the trash can. Her mom was standing in front of her talking such nonsense. I got it all right. I'll probably go home. I'm not feeling well again. I'll call you and you go for a walk. The weather is nice today. Vanessa could barely contain her resentment. Inside, everything was trembling. She went home, and Lisa sat down on a bench and watched her trail off in the shower. Lisa was having a very hard time now. She had had a fight with her mom. But it couldn't be left like this. So she decided to find out what kind of witch was spinning her mother for money. Vanessa returned home feeling upset. There was a seed of doubt inside. Maybe her daughter was right. But fear didn't give common sense a chance. Vanessa changed into her homemade clothes and decided to brew some soothing tea. Assuring a cup and taking individual waffles, she decided to spend time in the living room behind the big TV. Jumping from one gear to the next, she noticed something moving in the room. At first, she noticed an insect on the wall, but she didn't pay attention to it. There was such a heartwarming episode of Let Them Talk on TV that Vanessa began to drink tea more actively. The waffles quickly disappeared from the confetti, but then she noticed a huge cockroach crawling across the table. Oh, what a nuisance! Vanessa swatted the cockroach with a magazine and lay on the edge of the table. But then another one came out, and Vanessa saw it. With horror, she realized that there were many huge cockroaches crawling along the walls too. Their shiny backs were like lacquered paint. Vanessa jumped up from the couch. The cockroaches came out of nowhere. It became frightening. What was it? What is it? From where? Vanessa read. There was a woman screaming on the TV. Vanessa felt uneasy and ran into the kitchen to get some insect repellent. Everything was under the sink, but the right product was nowhere to be found. Vanessa dreamed. Hooked. But finally, she found the right can. She prepared for battle. But when she returned to the living room, to her amazement, she found not a single cockroach. What on earth was going on? Just what was the parade here? Vanessa walked over to the couch and began to remove the cushions from it, but nothing there either. Suddenly, something in the hallway started nodding so evenly, as if someone was walking in heels. Vanessa turned around. Past the doorway came a goat, a very real gray-horned goat. She slowly walked past the guest. Vanessa panted and started to cross herself. God save the devil. What's going on? Vanessa walked along the wall and looked out into the hallway. The lights were off, but the walls were moving for some reason. She stepped out and saw that the light was coming from strange drawings on the wall. Where had they come from? There were phosphorus inscriptions on the painted walls. And suddenly, they were roundels, forming strange words, the meaning of which Vanessa did not understand. But she screamed and ran to the room with the flowers. But there were burning writings and drawings here too. She was so frightened that, gasping for breath, she began to dash around the apartment looking for the telephone, but couldn't find it in the semi-darkness of the room, until suddenly it rang. Vanessa saw it on the sofa in the kitchen. It was Andrew. Vanessa pressed the button with shaky hands, but instead of a native voice, a long bleating sound came from the receiver. Vanessa shrieked and dropped the phone. Reciting the Our Father, she emerged into the darkness until she accidentally hit the light switch. Immediately, the kitchen became bright. Vanessa picked up the phone. It was ringing. It was as if a veil had been lifted from her eyes. Why didn't she just turn on the lights and run around in the dark and panic, going everywhere and turning on the lamps? Chandeliers, she created a complete illumination in the apartment. The lettering was gone. Everything stood still. The TV was playing music and a commercial for the cleaner was on. There was no goat either. Vanessa convinced herself that it was a dream. She fell asleep in front of the TV a little calmer. She poured the rest of the tea in the sink, washed a cup and made coffee. Something was making her a little dizzy. Vanessa took out yesterday's cutlets from the refrigerator, sliced white bread, and took hot coffee. Decided to continue watching TV. The cold cutlets were delicious. Vanessa let go again. All thoughts came to normal, and she decided to write to Emily. She needed to narrate the creepy things that had happened to her. In her letter, she mentioned cockroaches, a goat, and the reply was not long in coming. Emily wrote that such visions say that it is urgent to make a defense and should come to her on Monday. In the meantime, it was necessary to revive herbs, which she would send tomorrow by courier, of course, for a fee. Vanessa decided to keep the defense against the forces of evil and light. She did not put out and lay down very far past midnight. She kept dreaming of rustling and scraping. It seemed as if someone was sighing, scraping, and knocking nearby. First thing in the morning, she called her husband. He didn't come to the phone for a long time, and then, out of breath, Asiat explained in a voice that he sawed an apple tree in the garden. Over the winter it cracked and began to rot, Antonovka, and this year will not be. Sad, he said. Andrew, when are you coming? It's scary at home without you. There's something damnable going on again. I'm afraid to turn off the lights. Vanessa's got a lot of work to do. I'll be there Monday morning. What was that dream you had again? A bad one. Andrew was panting impatiently on the other end of the line. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm scared. I'm not going to see Emily until Wednesday. Vanessa, step into the room. She felt completely defenseless. Andrew was not going to run to her rescue. Vanessa, take a sedative. Watch movies at home. Everybody has bad dreams. You're exaggerating the problems. I know you're bored when you retire, but I can't just drop everything and come down here right now. Pull yourself together. Vanessa couldn't recognize her husband. He was terribly cold, and she sensed a note of irritation in his voice. She couldn't find anything to say and hung up. She was alone now. She didn't want to call her daughter. Why worry her with her fears? After lunch, the courier brought her a large bag of groin. It was heavily worm-wooded and was washed. Vanessa paid for the delivery and began to follow. The instructions were to put these plants everywhere in vases and set them on fire to weave. Vanessa obediently set to work, and so the apartment was filled with terry bitter smoke. It was stifling to the eyes, but Vanessa courageously endured and did not open the windows. So she sat for several hours and did not notice how she fell into oblivion. Something cold and wet brought her to consciousness. She did not realize where she was, what was happening. Her eyes were a hop of silence and her head and chest hurt badly, as if from underwater. She heard her husband's voice. He seemed to be arguing with someone on the phone. But then he noticed Vanessa coming to her senses. She was moving her hands as if removing cobwebs from her face. Stuffy, what's going on? She barely saw anything. Vanessa, can you hear me? Look, there was a doctor. You need to sign a waiver for hospitalization. That's when Vanessa felt a pen being put in her hand. She gathered her will and signed all the sheets. Her strength left her and she collapsed. Ligaments dusk, the morning came. Vanessa stirred. A heart fever clung to her cheeks. Boo. She sat in the bedroom on her bed. It was cool and crisp. The window was open. Outside, the road rumbled deafeningly. Rapallo, the asphalt, the windshield wipers broom. Vanessa felt a little strange, but her head was clear. She got up quietly, tangled herself in her robe, and went into the kitchen. The apartment was quiet, but from the kitchen came the vanilla scent of baking. Andrew was frying pancakes. A mound, ruddy piglets rested on the table. The pancakes were puffy, and there was a lacy steam coming off of them. A glass teapot stood nearby, steaming. It was reddening, a good brew of coarse leaf tea. Vanessa saw her favorite jam in a crystal rosette. Andrew called softly to her spouse. He turned around, holding the shovels in his hands. His gaze was anxious, but he smiled cautiously. "Wake up at last, Red Maiden, and I made pancakes. Taste them." Vanessa began to sew love-filled. I her and carried her to the table. Andrew gave her a white saucer and a jam spoon, poured hot tea, and she didn't live in a warm robe. "Andrew, how nice of you to come. I thought I'd fallen out of love." She was slyly eyeing my pancakes, and her husband, with a slight change in his face, refused the top. "It's a good thing I'm here. You almost burned down the apartment with your brooms. I come in, and from the threshold smoke in my face all bought wormwood. And you're unconscious on the couch. I open all the windows. There's a draft. I wiped you with a cold towel. I wanted to call an ambulance. But is it that small? Thank God you scared me." Andrew had a grip on his breakfast. He wouldn't touch it. "Andrew, I won't do it again. I'll protect the brooms, and no more brooms will be needed." But Andrew was frowning. Some thought was bothering him. He looked at Vanessa differently, but she could see he was worried about her. She wouldn't tell her bad dreams. She wanted to enjoy this morning. Meanwhile, Lisa was having a hard time at work. Since the morning, everything was falling out of her hands. Machinery was breaking down and she couldn't stand it. She went to Frank. Taking her ship slats, she went up to the second floor. Frank was sitting in his seat staring at a monitor. A glass of coffee slumped on the chair next to him. He looked up and smiled, but the smile quickly disappeared from his face. A pale Lisa stood in front of him. "What's wrong?" He stood up and sat her down next to him. "I need help. My mom is in contact with some charlatan fortune teller and is giving her large sums of money to remove spoilage. I'm afraid something terrible might happen. Frank, you're smart. Help me. This scammer needs to be brought out. What do we do?" "Wow. But your mom's not boring, though. But look, we need to get this woman's number and address, and then report her to the police." "Yeah, I'll ask my mom. But why is she so gullible? Why is this mystery in her life?" That's what she remembered. Andrew gave me the witch's number. I remembered. Andrew gave her Andrew's card. He gave her the idea. Oh, that's not good. Lisa grabbed her head. "It's okay. Now call your mom and get that witch's number and address. I'll go with you. We'll go see her and talk." Frank tried to support Lisa, seeing how excited she was, but Vanessa didn't pick up the phone. It was getting wordy. Lisa texted her mom and waited for a reply, but Vanessa answered closer to lunchtime. As soon as the text message arrived, Lisa rushed to Frank again. They looked together on the map for directions to this magical place. Emily didn't answer the phone, which was suspicious, so they decided to go for luck. Lisa took the whole next day off. Frank said he would work from home since he had a stomachache. So they lined up a free day and drove to the appointed address. Old town yellow stuccoed houses, narrow streets, and a bright blue sky over New York. A warm, wonderful day, a loop. And among the houses they found the right entrance in an archway. The wrought iron doors creaking, sponges furred, tearing away in the archway's vault. "You can't get through here silently," Frank said. They found the entrance to the cellar by dialing the cat on the door. They went down the green stairs to the very door. A torn-out door lock hung sadly. Frank knocked rumblingly on the door. Lisa listened tensely, trying to catch any sound on the other side. Frank knocked again. Soft footsteps were heard, and the door clicked shut. A short, elderly man appeared on the threshold. His fluffy white hair was a little axe-counted, and his head glowed from the bright lamp above the entrance. "Hello, young people." He looked at the uninvited guests with a little surprise, then glanced at his watch. "Classes start in 2 hours. You're a little early, aren't you?" Hello, we're here to see Emily. She's a mage, a healer. We were given this address. Lisa was showing on her smartphone screen a picture of a business card. Gentlemen, you must have the wrong address. This is my art studio. I teach painting. I don't look like a sorcerer. Grandpa laughed. He had kind eyes, rosy cheeks, a white beard. He was more like Santa Claus. How come? We were given the correct address and a description of how to go. Excuse me, have you ever rented out your workshop to anyone? Frank was trying to get to the bottom of it. Was there something fishy going on? No, of course not. Although I was at a health spa for about a month. I looked in my son's workshop, but he didn't tell me anything. The grandfather must have realized that in his absence, his son could have made a gamble to make money. You know what? Leave your number. I'll talk to my son, find out what's going on, and I'll call you. Thank you. Sure, I'd really appreciate it. Lisa dictated her number, and the painter promised to call her back. They left the dungeon and sat down on a bench outside the house. I wonder what this is turning out to be. Did our witch run away or change her address? Frank looked at Lisa. She's changed her place. That's right, a con artist. And not a stupid one at that. What do we do? Frank, how do we find her? Well, there's not a lot of options. We can wait for a call from the artist. We could talk to your mom again and go to her place. But apparently she's already changed her number and disappeared. Lisa realized that Frank was right. The con artist had thought of everything, and the chances of finding her were very slim. She had to talk to her mom again. So Lisa went to see her. Frank went with her. The visit was unexpected. Vanessa, having survived an unpleasant night with smoke and herbs, rescued herself with Emily. After all, something had to be done. Protection from evil eye and spoilage was needed as soon as possible. Emily's reply dumbfounded Vanessa. The witch wrote that she had done a reading in the cards. Foreshadow danger. A close person conceived evil, and the inheritance is to blame. All the spoils are likely to be inflicted on her by a relative, and soon he will show himself. Vanessa clutched at her heart. She didn't have many relatives, and she didn't socialize with anyone. The closest was her daughter. But how could this be? Surely she couldn't have done the spell. Vanessa was confused. Thoughts were born in her head, and one was crazier than the other. Everything seemed possible. Suddenly, Lisa appears on the doorstep with a young man. From the doorstep, they start making a fuss. Lisa asks about the witch. Vanessa tries to explain that the woman who Vanessa paid for magical services, a fraud. Vanessa is unwilling to listen to anything. Lisa, stop trying to talk this woman down. She helped me a lot, shouted Vanessa. Mom, wake up, you're being lied to. You've changed so much these weeks. It's like you've been replaced. Lisa almost cried and tried to explain, but her mother didn't want to believe, didn't want to hear. So Frank just forcibly took Lisa away. The argument was useless. As Frank drove Lisa home, she was silent, occasionally wiping away a tear. She wasn't screaming or hysterical. Just Campanella froze. Her face expressed no sadness, nothing. Frank didn't know what to say either. Didn't want to make things worse. He felt like a dog catcher right now. One wrong word, and the explosion would be unavoidable. The evening of sunset power was drowning in pink clouds. They lay on the city, stretched heavenly roads, and above, the sky was frozen like a pearl blue canvas. Here and there flashed sparks of tiny stars, and in the very center, hovered a young country month below the road rumbled. The cars were rushing into the endless distance. A little more, and a streetlight lit up the path. Vanessa couldn't find a place to go. Andrew came in from the store, didn't recognize his wife. Her hair was almost standing on end. She tried to call Emily, but she wasn't picking up. Vanessa, what's going on? What's wrong with you? Andrew put the bags in the hallway, and nothing's happening. Emily canceled the meeting, and I don't have protection. She said she's sending me the amulet. You see, she's looking for a new place to rent, because it's being remodeled. What am I supposed to do? I got demons all over me. And she's Vanessa. Come on, I made you some tea to calm you down. I picked it myself. Every blade of grass is good for you. Andrew ran to the kitchen, fussed over Vanessa's dishes, sorted out the bags, put the food on the shelf in the refrigerator. Then her favorite halva caught her eye, and her heart sorely defended her. She took this sweet bar, a box, and sat down at the table. How delicious is this halva? Oh, thank you, Andrew. Vanessa sliced samples and savored, covering her eyes. Andrew poured her a hard-boiled sedative. He took kefir from the refrigerator. Have a good appetite, Vanessa. Andrew said something strange, but Vanessa turned on the TV. The presenter was muttering some news, and Vanessa only shook her head at the bread. Bitter tea, but with halva and everything went down a treat. Vanessa kept watching and watching. There was nothing new in the news. Finally, she stopped at the Culture Channel. Swan Lake was on. The music was of a marvelous ballerina on thin legs, fluttering over the stage. Vanessa wanted to say something to Andrew, but suddenly realized he wasn't in the kitchen. There was a broken glass on the table. Andrew. Vanessa called out, but there was no answer. Did he just disappear into thin air? Vanessa went to look for him. For some reason, the corridor was skewed. Vanessa couldn't walk straight. The laminate floorboards were humped, and the walls arched. Vanessa called for Andrew, but he didn't answer. He wasn't in the bathroom. There was a black, lacquered grand piano in the living room, too, instead of a table, and it was playing a tune from Swan Lake. Finally, Vanessa went into the bedroom, but it was not her spouse who was there. There was a monster with its head in the bedroom, and it pounced on her. Vanessa screamed, fighting off the clean paws. Music was playing loudly in the kitchen. A black swan appeared on the stage to the ominous chords. Breaking free, she ran out into the hallway. But the floor beneath her feet danced like sea waves, and Vanessa crawled on her knees to the door, screaming and wailing, and she started banging on all the doors. At her screams, the neighbors came out. But Vanessa saw that their faces were distorted with anger. They were pulling in their ugly hands towards her. She didn't understand what was being said to her. The demons seemed to surround her. She screamed, "Help! Help! The demons! They want to kill me! God save me! My sinful soul!" howled Vanessa. Andrew called an ambulance. Vanessa was taken away with paranoid psychosis. The neighbors were shocked by what they saw. Because Vanessa was so calm, so friendly, who'd have thought she'd go crazy? They'd reread and went to bed. Andrew stayed alone in the apartment. In the morning, he called Lisa to tell her that Vanessa had been taken to the hospital. Lisa was nearly devastated by the news. Andrew also tried to explain his reasons to her in a very rambling way. Lisa suspected something wrong. She tried to reassure herself. Inside, everything was turning upside down. The ground was shifting out from under her feet. She didn't go to work. She couldn't go to the hospital either. The psychiatric ward was closed to the public. She called Frank. Telling everything that had happened, she voiced that she suspected Andrew as well, since the contacts of the fraud had gotten to her mom from him. Frank, not thinking long, suggested Lisa to follow her stepfather. After all, it's the best way to see if Lisa's suspicions are justified. I'm engaged with the camera work and the system. But that, as they say, is sub. I'll bring everything tonight. But I need Andrew to leave. He said he was going to the country house. He's got some errands to run. And I've arranged that I'll come to water the flowers, because there are a lot of them, and it takes time to take care of them. I'm afraid I'll have to stay in my old room. I've got the keys. I'll take my laptop and a few things. I'll meet you at 9 then. Andrew should be gone by then. Lisa felt an inner trepidation. She was afraid to be alone in that apartment, but she wanted to sort things out. In the evening, they met in the driveway. Frank had snatched a very heavy bag. He looked like an ant that had taken on too much weight. The intelligence agent had arrived. Frank equaled Lisa and reported with a stomp of his foot. Lisa laughed. His face was red with exertion, but his sense of humor was intact. The agent laughed. "Let's go. Let's not draw attention to your scores." They went up to the second floor. Lisa was fiddling with the key. The door was a little hard to open. She hadn't opened it in a long time. She'd forgotten the doggy lock was tricky. You can't open it just like that. They walked into a dark corridor. In the gloom, glimpses of the villa on the wall, barely visible. Frank noticed it and dropped his bag and went to look. "Lisa, close the door. Don't turn on the light yet. I noticed something unusual." Lisa shut the door. It had gone completely dark. The only silence was the humming of the refrigerator and the monotonous ticking of the wall clock. "Lisa, come here. Look, there's traces of phosphorus cheese and more paint. Apparently water is soluble. Since it was washed away, erased the traces all over the wall. See?" Frank jabbed his finger at the dimly glowing divots. Lisa took a closer look, and indeed the whole wall was in a drip and fake noticeable glow. "You're right. The wall itself is painted with a durable paint, so it's washable. And someone wrote or painted on it, and then washed it off. That's terrible. Who would do that? Maybe Andrew himself. Maybe he didn't. I think the camera idea is a good one. It's a shame they didn't think of it sooner. But a good idea comes afterward." Frank flipped the switch on the chandelier, illuminating the hallway. Lisa opened her room. Everything in it was the same as before. She'd moved out of her mom's. 5 years ago, there had been a glass bed, a rose closet, and a computer desk. The monitor filled up. The system unit appeared, also stood despondently downstairs, but the chandelier shone properly with all the bulbs. Lisa did not indulge in reminiscing, but she felt the past stirring somewhere in the back of her mind. Even the smell in the room was the same. Frank began to install the system. Everything had to be done as neatly and discreetly as possible. They didn't put cameras only in the bathroom and toilet. It was barely done by nightfall. Everything went to work. Colorful pots, pictures, shelves of books. After a little tinkering, Frank started debugging the hardware on Lisa's laptop. Deep past midnight, she fell powerlessly asleep. But Frank stocked up on coffee and worked manfully. In the morning, he finished everything and fell asleep on the couch in the living room. The night was over, and the morning was overcast. Rain drummed on the windowsill. Large puddles stacked on the asphalt. A fog lay over the city. Lisa woke up the first moment. She couldn't realize where she was. She sat down on the bed and wiped her eyes with her palms. She wanted to fall on the cold pillow and forget herself. She didn't feel any more energized during the night. Then she remembered Frank. Where had he gone? Lisa quietly slid off the bed springs. The unit clanked unhappily, carefully stepping over the cold laminate flooring. Lisa regretted forgetting at-home slippers had to put on cherry guest slippers in the hallway. They were a little too big for her and were about to fly off her foot. Lisa walked past the living room, then turned around and looked into the room, half-hanging 6 from the couch as Frank slept. Lisa didn't bother beating him up and went into the kitchen. Everything here was unknown to her. She looked for tea on the shelf, and there were many jars. Different teas. They all had their own labels on them. Vanessa's mom didn't drink tea from tea bags on principle, only fresh overboiled. There were cans of tea, fruit assortment, clown sedative. Like a tea stall. Lisa sighed and took a tea. The mysterious teapot was empty. All the cups were on the shelf in an even row. Lisa pulled out a mug with colorful cats on it. She had given it to her mother for March 8th. Frank chose a blue cup with a Mediterranean pattern. After putting the cups in the kettle, she decided to do an audit of the refrigerator. But it was almost empty. It was as if a hurricane had blown through. Only jars of jam stood, sad and in the farthest corner of the shelves, and a small saucepan. Lisa sighed sadly. This was strange. Mom always has a full fridge. She cooks every day. And here it was empty. After all, she was unexpectedly hospitalized, and the groceries had nowhere to go. Lisa thought it was a rumor. She looked in the freezer. Everything was the same as it had been before. Cookies, cutlets, dumplings. The freezer was full of food. She was distracted from her thoughts by Frank. He stood at the entrance to the kitchen, yawning furiously. His eyes were red and puffy. "But what breakfast are we having?" he asked. Lisa pulled out a bag of dumplings and rattled the packet. "I think I'll have dumplings and tea. The fridge is empty." Apparently, Andrew had taken the groceries to the villa. Dumplings are the food of the gods. It's a great way to start the day. Frank, staggering, disappeared into the bathroom. Lisa took out a large skillet and put it on the gas. The bottle of oil was next to the stove, but the spices were still to be found. Pulling out drawer after drawer in turn, she found a stack of bagged paper towel rolls, pipe cleaner, and dishwashing detergent. Finally, she found forks, spoons, and spices dumped into the hot oil the entire package of dumplings. She leaped from the stove like a knight, putting the glass lid forward like a shield. The dumplings were sewn into the body of the oil, started spitting hot splashes in different directions. It was scary to approach the stove, but Frank came to the rescue. He carefully took the spoon and lid from Lisa. "Let a professional do the work. You can rest for a while." Lisa obediently sat down at the tables turned on the TV. The volume was at maximum. Lisa clamped her ears shut. Frank crouched down in surprise at the quirks of the sound being turned down to minimum. Lisa looked at Frank at how loud it was. "Who's looking at the TV? Can you stall at that sound?" I was scared. She wrinkled her nose in discomfort. "No one's watching. It's either accidentally pressed or on purpose. Like to scare you. For example, I just had a close call with Conrad. The effect is unbelievable." Frank held on to his heart, leaning back in his chair. "What other surprises will there be? We have to be on the lookout. I don't really want to stay here now, but there's no choice. We'll take the bait." When Frank left, Lisa locked herself in her room. She sat on her bed and looked at the monitor. All the cameras were working properly. Nothing was happening. Out of boredom, she went to check. The violet rack stood with the lights on. It was on-timed. The flowers had cable watering. And so far so good. Lisa ran her hand over the fluffy leaves, velvety like a cat's paws. She liked violets and she was a little girl. Then she decided to watch the bedroom. The bed was shot. Clean carpet everywhere without a speck of dust. A huge closet with glass doors was wall to wall. It had a picture of a beautiful mountain landscape on it. That's where the clothes were stored. Lisa pushed one of the doors open. Inside smelled like her mother's perfume, and there were dresses, pants, and coats hanging. Downstairs were boxes of shoes. A fur coat was stored in a case. Lisa opened the other casement. It was half empty. There should have been all those Andrew things in there. But besides his wedding suit, there was an old jacket and a couple of ties hanging there. But on the shelves were his things, a sweater, jeans. It smelled like heavy perfume and masculine. Then Lisa hastily closed the closet. There was an earpiece on the dresser at the headboard of the bed. The phone charger lay in a box against the wall. Nothing. Suspicious, though Lisa saw his needles next to the bed. They were crumbling on the carpet. Lisa crouched down to examine them and noticed bags sticking out from under the bed. He couldn't be seen behind the covers. Lisa pulled out a large bag. It contained some leftover herbs at the bottom. What had Emily sent? Among the new items was a piece of paper describing the ritual and how the herbs were to be burned. Lisa grabbed the package and ran to her room. She took a picture of the entire herbarium and the note. Then she twisted that bag tightly and stowed it in the alcove of her closet where the bar came off. That was her secret place. There she hid cigarettes and money. Mom had no idea about the icy stash. All the photos were sent to Frank. He said he'd try to identify the plants, but since they're dry, it would be a challenge. Lisa had to take a week off work to continue her investigation, and she wanted to spend that time as productively as possible. But for 2 days, nothing happened. Lisa searched up and down the place. When she got unbearably bored, she decided to go for a walk. It was warm, crowded. She was able to forget her anxiety for a while. But back home, the anxiety came home. Suddenly, Andrew returned. Lisa saw his bag and her heart pounded harder. She didn't trust him and didn't know how to behave properly. They hadn't talked much, so Lisa decided to play dumb. He might think she could be fooled just like her mother. Lisa dismounted and quietly snuck into her room. She had a separate key for that. She had put the lock on when she found out that her mother had decided to remarry. She didn't want a stranger touching her things. Vanessa didn't mind. After all, the room was personal space, and the other 4 were quite enough for her. Lisa went straight to look at the cameras. Andrew was in the bedroom. He was packing his suitcase with his belongings from the shelves. His movements were abrupt. He was visibly nervous and was texting someone on the phone. Lisa wondered, what is he hiding? But how to find out? The plan came quickly. Lisa decided to order a food delivery. She chose pizza. Corny, yes, but everyone loves pizza. 45 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Andrew got up and went to the door. Lisa slipped through the crack like a mouse. Her phone was at the ready. Andrew left his phone on the dresser. Lisa saw a new message from Camille pop up on the screen. Who the hell is Camille? Lisa thought. Opening the message, she took a few pictures of the correspondence without looking, and also slipped out of the bedroom into the stairwell. In raised tones, the pizza delivery man and Andrew were communicating. Lisa took pity on the delivery man and walked out. When Andrew saw her, he turned pale. Lisa paid for the pizza. Lisa, where did you come from? I thought you were eating violets and leaving. I'm sorry, did I scare you? It's a long drive, so I thought I'd stay in my room for a while. I'll keep an eye on the flowers. Lisa was cradling boxes of warm pizza. Will you be having dinner? She asked politely. Andrew wanted to refuse at first, but after thinking about it, he agreed. The smell was very appetizing. Yes, I'll be right there. Go to the kitchen. He threw over his shoulder, heading for the bedroom. Lisa walked unsteadily into the kitchen. Opening the pizza, she took 2 plates and put them on the table. Andrew entered the kitchen. His face was red now. He looked like a boiled crawfish with a puffy mustache. His bald spot on his head seemed to be smoking. He'd obviously just been cursing and was trying to force himself back inside. Lisa put herself a couple slices of pizza, but didn't feel like eating at all, especially in such company. Andrew, on the other hand, changed the relaxed cheese, writing off his mustache gloves. Melissa had made quite an impression on him. He coughed, but was clearly enjoying himself. Lisa, as she looked on, inadvertently choked, began to cough and spat a piece on the table, wiping away snot and tears. Andrew saw this and offered tea. You be careful. Where are you in a hurry? To be quiet. I'll be right back. I'll make some tea. It's good for the nerves. Lisa noticed a cup of tea in front of her. It smelled strongly of syringe and mint. Andrew smiled. I'm breathing now. What's the tea with? I think it smells like syringe. Lisa sniffed the cup. Yes, there's Melissa's nonsense in there. Strawberry leaves Street John's wort. Anything from the woods that's useful. Andrew didn't look at Lisa and mentioned pizza. Lisa tasted the tea. It was bitter and nasty, but she didn't let on. Did you call the clinic as a mom? Lisa asked, trying to catch Andrew's gaze. He tensed. Called. They said Vanessa is doing better. She's in therapy. If everything is fine, she'll be discharged soon. That's good. Can you give me the number? I'll make the call. Is there anything you need to bring in? Yeah, I've got you down for tea and beer, and let's go. I'm dictating. I've got it in my notebook. Andrew made sure Lisa drank her tea, but she didn't want to. So she pretended the tea was very hot and came loudly. It went like this. They sat for about 30 minutes. Then a tune started playing in the bedroom. Andrew got up from the table with a strained smile and left. Lisa remained sitting in silence. She did not drink tea. Standing up from the table, She noticed that she felt a little dizzy and sat back down. She took a few sips. There must have been something in the tea besides Melissa. There was a reason Andrew had brewed it, and Lisa clutched the edge of the kitchen corner. What to do? Lisa thought. She was scared. This way the tea is hardly poisoned. I'm going to die, but I need to get to the room and lock it. Fumbled for the key in her hand. She clutched it like a lifeline, stood up slowly, and walked down the wall. The ceiling and what seemed to be chandeliers wobbled. The floor began to fuse together, and saints appeared on it. Lisa couldn't believe her eyes. This isn't real. It's tea. She repeated in her head, pour by pour. As she dismounted from her room, she saw a silhouette at the end of the hallway. Andrew was there. His glasses glinted ominously. He seemed impossibly huge. Lisa lunged into the room and slammed the door shut, but she managed to lock herself in. Doors were pushed from the other side. She realized she had to act and piled on it as hard as she could, pushing with her legs. A hand appeared in the opening. She tried to fumble for a tear. She screamed and hit the hand with the clutched key. A scolding was heard and the hand disappeared. Lisa had enough time to lock herself in the room. Her head was spinning. She emerged until she was sitting on the bed, but immediately the door was swinging shut. Andrew was trying to break the lock. He was saying something, swearing, but in Lisa's ears it was an unintelligible hum. She started trying to text Frank, but then a stinking smoke drifted into the room. Lisa stopped banging on the door. Staggering, she started to open the window wide open. Opening the windows, she breathed in the clean air. Finally, she was able to dial Frank. Frank, I've been poisoned, I think. I don't know where it's real and where it's crazy. Andrew seems to be breaking into my room and there's smoke, but I don't know if it's real or not. Now the chandelier is wobbling like an earthquake, and there's a black blot creeping across the closet. I'm scared. Lisa lay down on the windowsill and closed her eyes. It was easier not to look. It made it easier for me to call the ambulance police. Do what? Frank was agitated. Lisa heard his voice from far away, as if underwater. No, you have to get there before Andrew escapes. I'm sure he's involved. He's packing. Lisa inhaled a deeper breath of air and slid to the floor. She seemed to be lying on the waves, and they rolled higher. Out of sight, the blue sky shone brightly with the sun, and the wind carried the cries of seagulls. She woke up to the noise of someone banging forcefully on the door. Lisa sat down on the floor with an effort. Her hair was blowing in the breeze, and the smell of cherry blossoms wafted from the street. Lisa rubbed her eyes, trying to banish the cloudy veil. Her head grimaced. It seemed to be pulled by an iron hoop. The voice outside the door was familiar to her. It was Frank. Lisa started leaning on the windowsill and staggered to the door. The key remained stuck in the keyhole, and with obedient hands, she turned it one turn. Opening the door, she staggered. Andrew stood on the threshold. Frank's voice was in the receiver of the phone. Andrew pulled Lisa out of the room by the arm. The door slammed its draft. Silently, he led her into the bedroom. There were papers on the bed. Lisa said cold, clammy fear. Andrew sat her down on the edge with force. Did you look? Here's the deal. I want it to be amicable and nonviolent. You sign the papers that you give up rights to your share of the apartment, rights out the highway to your studio, and everybody lives happily ever after. Your mother signed the sale papers, and $120,000 was transferred into the account. The apartment is sold. I'm registered here, and now it's my property. But you, my dear, I don't need you here. You see, my dove is not visual. Andrew, ingratiatingly and coldly, explained to Lisa his motives. He was a snake that good Vanessa had taken to heart. How could you? Forced Lisa. Baby, sign it. Vanessa, I've got a crush on her. A dream, not a wife. But boring. I'm being nice to her. She'll be in the hospital for a month, and then she'll move on. She could have gone to the cemetery. Sign it. I don't like rudeness. Andrew moved the papers to Lisa and put a pen in front of her. Lisa realized that if this man didn't sign, he could do anything. With a trembling hand, she signed the papers. Andrew deftly wrote them out and patted Lisa on the head. "What a good girl, but not to me. You have an apartment, and you'll get married. I'm not taking your villa. I'm being kind. Nothing personal, just business. Do you know how low academic salaries are?" Andrew packed his things, packed his documents in a suitcase, and thanks to the naive Babenko, "I'll open my own business, live for myself. After all, the main thing is that you have to love a woman, and she will turn your soul out." Andrew left the bedroom. The front door slammed. Lisa fell on the pillow and howled with hopelessness, fear, and self-pity. Some time passed, and she grew tired, calmed down. She just lay there, listening, the wall clock flowing in the window, batting for a fly. She could not find her way out of the magazine. The streets of freedom were before her. But what could a little fly do? Lisa sat up on the bed, and there might still be more. There was a laptop computer in the room. Was the footage from the camera still being recorded? Lisa wiped her face on the shelf and pillows and went into the room. The lock was skewed, and it wouldn't open. All she did was yank the knob in vain. Just then, the front door slammed and Frank appeared on the doorstep. He was running. He couldn't catch his breath. His excitement subsided. He saw Lisa alive. In 3 steps he approached and hugged her tightly. Just kept silent. She could hear his heart pounding hard. She nakedly relaxed, became, finally, calm, safe. The door closed. "We need all the footage from the cameras." "Frank, I was right." "Andrew, cheater." He set the whole thing up. Lisa was determined. She felt empowered. Now it was time to act. Frank opened the doors only harder with his shoulder, the key falling to the laminate floor with a clatter. The laptop had recorded everything from the cameras. They had proof. Lisa had also collected all the tea to take to forensics. They filed a report the same day, but it was as if Andrew's footprints had vanished. "I had to find Emily, or maybe her name was really Camille." After all, Andrew had been corresponding with an unknown woman. A few days passed. The results of the tests came back. Almost all the tea was poisonous in small doses, powers, and were jeweled and composed in a competent manner. They were unlikely to kill, but they did cause hallucinations. Long sleeps could, with regular use, drive one insane. Having obtained a doctor's report, Lisa proved that there were traces of psychotropic substances in her mother's blood. Vanessa's mother underwent a course of drips and felt well again. But Lisa didn't immediately to tell her mother why she needed to get into a confusing situation with the apartment, and Andrew needed time to maneuver. A week later, Lisa got a call from the painter. He was, alas, torturing his son. To whom had he rented the place in his absence? It turned out, while his father was recovering. The son decided to make a joke, but there wasn't enough money. Suddenly, he met a lady named Camille. The lady immediately paid him $1,000 for a month. All he had was a cell phone and her photo. Thanks to this data, Camille was quickly found. She turned out to be an actress in some small theater. She made money off of gullible people by providing fortune-telling and healing services. She'd known Andrew for 5 years. He used to send rich clients to her, and she used to indoctrinate them with his fantasies, spoils, hexes, and other problems. She was spinning herself to absurdity. She made good money on them, but she had to give a percentage. Andrew was a good psychologist. He used Camille as a tool, too. She felt special. Once they found Camille, the police were in no hurry to find Andrew, and the apartment was officially his. It had already been sold through third parties. Lisa didn't know what else to do. While she pondered, she decided to call her father. There's no such thing as ex-military. He still worked for the state, but as a special training instructor. He lived in a private house. She had already planned to call on May Day, and so it had coincided quite well. After congratulating her father, she paused. "I need help. You know that I do everything. I don't ask for money or favors myself. But things are bad now. The con man took my mom and I's apartment, and my mom's still in the hospital. He poisoned her, and the police can't find him. And the apartment is for sale. Dad listened in silence. Over the years, he had learned to listen carefully and not to throw emotions around. His temper had already gotten him bloody. He sighed. "You've made a mess of things. I'll make a call." The phone buzzed. Lisa stood listening to them. She wanted to hear something else, but her father wasn't saying much. She decided if he said it, he would call. The wait began to stretch unbearably long, like a long earthworm wrestling with a stubborn thrush. And Lisa waited. Andrew had been found. He was to be flown to New York. Lisa and Frank began to prepare for the trial. But despite her father's support, the case dragged on. More and more stories of the scam came to light. As Andrew said, he was very fond of Vanessa. His previous victims had succumbed to long-ago damp ground. They were elderly, single, and very wealthy. The case had grown such a coat over the year that Lisa was tired of waiting for retribution. The apartment was recovered sooner. The lawyers had been very helpful, but Vanessa did not dare to return to it. Memories frightened her. Everything reminded her of nightmares. Only violets, the flowers that were dear to her heart, remained her outlet. They sold the apartment for a very large sum. Vanessa moved into a private house with all the comforts of home and her own conservatory. It may be small, but her palm tree found its place there. The violet business continued. Lisa and Frank helped to set up the new shelving space. Vanessa's life began to settle down again. She got a cat, a fat blue Brit with aristocratic manners and a huge head. The cat had almost the full force of a woman's love and was hiding under the racks. But when Massimo called him, the cat lived like cheese and butter. He knew how to please Vanessa. Every night before she went to bed, he sang her songs, stomped on the plate, and meowed. At night, he protected her sleep. She never had nightmares. One day, the cat brought in a huge mouse. All morning, he guarded it under the neighbor's shed. The cat howled proudly, carrying the trophy. Vanessa was sitting in the arbor, parsing violet leaves. Suddenly, she heard a pleasant male voice, "A handsome." "What kind of cat?" "A real hunter. And you steps and steps, howling like a hussar." Vanessa even began to see who it was that was so praising her cat. A neighbor came to the villa. He, leaning on the wooden fence, watched the cat. "The cat is your prey to the mistress," and the tanned man watched him with delight. "This is Marquez. We are a British cat. He is a good hunter," Vanessa said proudly. "The cat is a marvel. I haven't been here for a long time, and there's a cat with mice under the barn. You're new here, aren't you?" "My name's Nick." The neighbor stood under the apple tree like Apollo in a plaid shirt. "Nice to meet you. I'm Vanessa. I've been living here for a few months now." "Vanessa, would you like to grill a steak tonight? It's my birthday tonight. I'm on vacation. Finally, the freedom of life. I don't mind in principle, but only with the cat." Vanessa looked at the meat. He did not live, sitting in the grass under the rays of the sun. His fur coat glistened like a mink coat. "Of course, he's invited too. I'm expecting you." Vanessa sat down at the table to sort out the violets. It's good to have a cat like that. Life is getting better. In the summer, life changed for the daughter. Lisa received an offer from Frank. They decided they would have a very nice wedding. But first won the court luck, and Lisa's father was on the side of justice and clutching a folder of documents. She came out the winner. It was all in the past. Andrew relied on forensic video evidence to prove his guilt. Neither Vanessa nor Lisa saw him again. Finally, it was possible to breathe fully. Lisa and Frank arrived at Vanessa's new home. The large apple orchard was a nice addition to the house. Young apple trees stood, all studded with different varieties of apples. There was emerald grass everywhere you looked. Lisa was lounging on the recliner, eating cherries. There was a huge basin of berries in front of them. She watched her Frank help her neighbor Nick with the grill. The men were determined to try to build a fire. Vanessa and the cat were enjoying the warm summer. The cat was lying to himself in the sunshine, and Vanessa was relaxing on the swing under the apple tree. It was about to ripen.